Chapter 1283. Did you kill Handler 302? A loud voice that seemed to have come from the one witnessing this disturbance rang out. What happened next caused Gustav's face to darken as the being engrossed in the enclosure of darkness was revealed. From the looks of things, the being wasn't alone, or maybe it was better to say, it wasn't a Singe being. Kyre, the handler, who happened to obviously be the one witnessing this incident, was yanked upwards immediately by a pair of dark arms that appeared out of nowhere. She was struggling to free herself and activate an ability, but her body began to corrode from the moment the dark arms clutched onto her body. Gustav could see the dark marks appearing on the outstretched insect-like fingers of the handler. No matter how much she struggled, she was powerless in the face of the darkened and corrosive atmosphere. FYI, her vision quaked again, causing the footage to get a little blurry, and the next thing Gustav noticed was they had lifted off the ground. The ground kept getting farther and farther away as they ascended to great heights. Thrira, all of a sudden they began to descend with speed as the 30 different arms of darkness wrapped around her body pulled her down with intensity towards a massive copper-like metallic rooftop with a long protrusion. Bam! Vision blackened as the footage turned dark for a few seconds. Gurg. Gustav could hear the sound of the handler coughing as little light returned to her vision. It was obvious that she was struggling to breathe and remain alive. The footage was currently blurry, which was also a depiction of how things must have been for her in the final moments. Gustav could see a massive copper-colored pillar stained with blood, wedged right in the middle of the handler's body. Her face had tilted forward a bit to see the state she was in. Her arms trembled as her fingers reached out to touch the copper-colored protrusion in a bid to help herself out of the current predicament. Unfortunately, she was only able to leave a blood-stained print on it. She was unable to gather any energy as her blood flowed like a busted kitchen pipe, drenching the entire rooftop in its murkiness and metallic stench. Her vision turned even more blurry vision as she completely ran out of energy to keep her head up at this point. Her neck tilted to the back, and she slowly succumbed to the claws of death, dragging her into the afterlife. In the upside-down state of her blurry vision, the beings responsible for this stood at the edges of the rooftop unbothered while her life got snuffed out. Their writhing darkness casted a gloom of negativity across the vicinity. A thorny-looking crown floated above, one of them whose figure had dark tattoos all over. These dark tattoos seemed to be alive as they wriggled like worms, forming different shapes and changing positions occasionally on the skin of this being. The thorny crown floating above the head of this figure emitted flame like dark mist, causing it to look like it was dancing erratically to a silent beat in the dead of this ominous night. The other dark beings in the vicinity reacted oddly as the being with the crown floating above his head fell backwards, passing out on the rooftop. The playback stopped the moment he fell unconscious, but at the point where it stopped, Gustav noticed that the dark beings in the vicinity were dissipating. It almost seemed like they were about to dematerialize, but one couldn't tell exactly what happened next since it ended here. This is truly a hard pill to swallow, Gustav muttered with a disturbed look. I told you, the system voiced in response. Why do you think he did it? The system questioned. That's the problem. From what I noticed, there doesn't seem to be a motive. I am not even sure Falco is aware of what happened here. This isn't how he uses his dark abilities, and his tattoos are usually not that way. I find this whole situation to be very odd, but my major suspicion falls on that crown, Gustav said while getting up. You've become too trusting. It might come back to bite you in the ass. The system tried to give Gustav a reality check. Falco wouldn't do this in his right senses, Gustav reiterated. And with everything that has happened for you still believe he is in his right senses? It might be best to put him down now, before he becomes more trouble in the future. The system suggested. You're starting to sound like Endrick. Gustav's eyes squinted. This might be the only time I and that little deviant will agree on something. I think you should take a look at Snovel. Siamacronim, listen. Yes, I do suspect him after everything that has happened so far and how Endrick warned me about him. But that doesn't mean I will jump to conclusions without uncovering everything that led to this, as well as the motive behind it, Gustav voiced with a firm tone. And now you're just being biased. If it was a different person, you'd waste no time in putting them down first. The system mare a low chortle. I never said I was a good person. I will figure out whatever is going on in full details first before acting, Gustav stated. Falco has committed a crime on alien soil. A grave one at that. Your duty as an MBO officer would be to take him in and ask questions later. I'm not doing that, Gustav replied while walking towards the door. Are you thinking about the consequences this will bring, or are you just making decisions from a place of emotions? Nobody knows he is responsible yet, for now. More like forever. No footage was found. Nobody managed to witness the incident despite it happening in the open, and even if they were able to access the handler's last memories like I did, they would only see dark figures. They won't be able to tell that it is Falco, since his face wasn't shown and his entire body was also black, the lighting in the vicinity as well. We only know it's Falco because we've seen the crown before. Even his tattoos were different. Gustav explained his reasoning behind why no one would ever discover that Falco was the culprit. Even at that, this time it was a handler who you bear no emotional attachment to. Do you know who's going to be next? Do you know if Angie would be the next person on a pike? Or E.E. dying in such a gruesome way? Think, Gustav, think. The system kept at it. Shush. I'm going to him now. Gustav walked out of his room in the next instant, choosing not to further engage the system. He soon arrived at the passageway that led to the other rooms and strode forward till he arrived before the fourth door. Calm. He knocked gently on this door a couple of times before speaking. Falco, you there? Calm. He knocked a few more times before a low, timid voice replied from within. Yeah? It's Gustav. Open up. The door slid open in the next instant, and Gustav walked into to meet Falco cooped up on his bed in a cross-legged format with a massive duvet wrapped around his body like a cloak. His facial expression made it seem like he was a little scared as his body twitched repeatedly while he rocked forward and backwards nervously. What's wrong? Gustav inquired. Nothing, just having sleeping troubles, Falco responded with a slightly shaky tone. Oh, still having those nightmares? Gustav asked. It's fine. Why are you here? Falco inquired with a wry smile. Gustav proceeded to step forward with a straight face and stopped when he arrived before Falco's bed. Activating sound space. Gustav's eyes twinked with a bluish glow as a transparent spherical bluish barrier appeared around the both of them. What are you? I want you to tell me the truth, Falco. Gustav cut him off before he could question what was going on. Did you kill Handler 302? The moment Gustav spat this question out, Falco's face turned full panicky. His body began trembling as tension permeated the sound space Gustav had just conjured. How did you ho? He stuttered repeatedly, unable to form a single coherent sentence as his mind sank to the depths of fear. Gustav's current expression made things no better as he stared Falco directly in the eyes. Think carefully before you reply and tell me nothing but the truth. Did you kill Handler 302? Gustav's voice grew even several degrees colder as he questioned once more. The place turned very silent, with only Falco's breathing growing louder and increasing in pace by the second. The silence was getting almost too much to bear at this point, as Falco felt chills run down his spine. He drew in a breath of confidence and defeat before finally speaking. I think so. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A, and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1284. I think so. What do you mean by that? It is a yes or no question, Falco, Gustav said with a calm but threatening tone. I can't answer with a yes or no because I don't recall what happened, Falco responded with a fearful tone. I saw you, Falco. Falco's breathing turned even more hurried as Gustav said this. What do you mean by you saw me? I really can't remember what happened. When I came to, she was already dead. I swear. Falco stuttered a couple of times, but managed to voice the last part with a look of certainty. Everything. Falco's mind reeled back to the incident. Everything. Don't skip anything, Gustav reiterated. I was asleep. Falco began narrating how he had another nightmare on that day. He explained to Gustav that in his nightmares there was always a person that claimed to be his father advising him to take the crown, how he would get threatened with insanity, and the so-called voice always telling him his loved ones would be put in danger if he keeps declining the crown. He went on to mention how, in the last nightmare, everyone was killed. Angie, E.E., Endrick, Eldris, Timi, Rhea, Elevra, Glade, and even Gustav. The voice mentioning how they would be in danger, but not from the voice, rather from him. Then he awakened to find himself on the rooftop with the corpse of the handler behind him. How long has this been happening? The voice. How long has it been appearing in your dreams? Gustav inquired with a worried tone. Since the nightmares began, since Darko's disappearance, Falco answered with a low tone. This has been happening since that time. I thought you said they were just nightmares. Gustav had a slightly shocked expression on his face as he voiced out. I couldn't tell anyone. At first, I thought they were normal nightmares, but then it started getting worse. I couldn't go to sleep without the voice appearing in my dreams. And every time I would watch you guys die, by my hands. I think I'm going crazy. Maybe you should just put me away, Gus. Tears welled at the corner of Falco Eyes' voice. He looked like he was starting to lose it. Hold on, work with me here, Falco. The voice claims to be your father, right? Gustav questioned. Yes. Have you ever found your father suspicious? Is this something he could get involved with? Think. Gustav kept questioning. No, my father is a very simple mixed blood, who only has eyes for business. Also, he is very weak. I am currently the highest in bloodline rank within my entire immediate family. Big brother followed in father's footstep and went into business while father made me join the MBO, especially because of Darko. They believe I'd be able to learn how to control my bloodline better if I joined the MBO camp, Falco explained. It looked like he already thought about it as well and concluded his father could never be behind this. The voice, the crown. Falco, did you ever stop to think you might be adopted? Gustav inquired. It hit Falco like a train the moment Gustav pointed this out. It was a possibility that never crossed his mind, most especially because right from a young age people had mentioned he was a splitting image of his father. That can't be right. Oh, wait, you've never seen my father. Falco shook his head. There's always a possibility, Gustav pointed out. In this case, I don't think there is. I really am a splitting image of my father. Falco seemed to be in denial regardless. Either way, we need to get to the bottom of this, and we have two focal points, your father and the crown, Gustav listed. I think the crown may just be showing me these nightmares, so I can accept it, Falco said. That is a possibility as well, but we can't have you out here killing people, Falco. At the moment you are a danger to everyone, and even yourself. Gustav decided to lay it down straight. I know. That's why I don't want to join the next challenge. What are you going to do to me now? Are you going to hand me over to Planet Ozius authorities? Falco inquired with a sigh of defeat. No, we need to find out who you are. Beyond all of this, there is something. Your true identity. We need to discover everything. And the motive behind all of this, Gustav responded while stepping closer. How are we going to do that? Falco questioned. You are going to accept the crown, Gustav stated. Right, I'm going to accept the... Wait, what? No. Falco immediately shook his head, declining. We need to know what we're dealing with. You need to know who you are. For some reason, Gustav was starting to suspect that Falco had some identity crisis. I cannot do that. I feel I would lose myself. Falco shook his head repeatedly, shuddering at the thought of accepting the power. Pat. Gustav placed his hand on Falco's shoulder and stared down at him. Listen to me, Falco. Do you want to know who you are and why all of this is happening? Gustav inquired. I think you should take a look at Snavel. Siamakronem, I wanna, but it's too risky. Who knows what might happen? I don't want to harm any of you. Falco kept shaking his head. If you remain this way, the chances of harming everyone is higher. If you accept it at the very least, well, know what exactly we're dealing with instead of being on the fence, Gustav reiterated. But it's your power, isn't it? Dominate it and control it instead of letting things go the other way around. Falco will be Falco. It is your power, Gustav stated with a tone of certainty. Maybe you're right. Maybe you'll be able to get Darko back faster too. Falco was starting to consider it. That's the spirit. It is your power. It should answer to you. It's time to claim it, Gustav responded. Falco took in a mouthful of breath as he gathered courage. Okay, I'll do it, he said while letting go of the duvet covering his body. Good. I'll be here for you the whole time if you need me, Gustav smiled with a comforting gaze. Falco nodded before shutting his eyes and activating his bloodline. Shro, his body began emitting dark mist in the next instant, and the image of the thorny crown appeared in his mind. In the next moment, half of the thorny crown appeared in the room, hovering few inches above Falco's head. Few will begin the process of accepting the power now, Falco voiced as he opened his eyes. His facial expression displayed a look of confoundment as he stared at Gustav before him. Ha 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 ha, good job, my son. Good job. I knew you had a deep respect for this person, and it worked. The voice that plagued Falco's nightmare was ringing out from in between Gustav's lips. What? Wah. Falco couldn't believe his eyes as the realization dawned on him. Sendrik could tell that Gustav had truly forgiven him now, and it was a great feeling for him. He felt all his hard work to prove himself had paid off. The battles continued and soon the batch ended. Endrik and Moviard's battle along with 4 others had been the highlight of this batch. To say the spectators were stunned would be an understatement. Things were getting more interesting as weaker planets lost all of their points and got automatically disqualified. Soon the planets challenging weaker ones to easily gain points would be unable to do so anymore once every single one of them was gone. Yuhuko, are you ready? Gustav voiced while approaching the black-haired beauty with a doll-like face. Huh? What do you mean? Yuhiko questioned with an expression of confoundment. We've lost 1,200 points from declining the other challenges after our 3 tries, Gustav voiced. Yuhiko nodded while maintaining an expression of intrigue, wondering where Gustav was going with this. It's time to regain everything and add a little more to that, Gustav added. Huh? How? What did you mean? Yuhiko stuttered. Gustav stood before her and gave her a small finger twack on her forehead. You're going next, dummy, he voiced. Yuhiko looked up at the screens displaying the 150 participants selected for the next batch. I am not amongst, she voiced with confusion still. Yes, but one of these participants are going to challenge you, and it's going to be someone with a high number of points, Gustav responded. Are you saying I should accept a challenge? Yuhiko's eyes widened with an expression of surprise. Yes, don't be slow, Gustav responded. But I thought Yuhiko still couldn't hide the look of surprise on her face. Whatever you thought was wrong. I was letting everyone bear a stereotypical thought about you in their minds. It's going to pay off now. A smirk appeared on Gustav's face as he closed in further on Yuhiko. You go out there, take them by surprise, and win. After voicing this out, Gustav turned around and moved back to his initial spot. Yuhiko's body trembled slightly in both excitement and anticipation as she stared in Gustav's expression. Chapter 1285, however. The sharp outburst of intense dark energy only lasted a moment. It vanished as quickly as it appeared. Gustav met Falco, laying on TH's bed peacefully with nearly nothing out of place within the room. The loud crash from the door getting kicked down had alerted the others, who were now making their way towards Falco's room, well. Gustav stepped forward and looked around, but really couldn't find anything. Falco, who was laying on the bed sleeping on the other hand, had ropes of dark mist floating out of his mouth, which was a bit ajar. What is this? Gustav could barely sense Falco's presence despite standing before him. It was almost like his existence was fickle. Gustav wondered if this would be the same for the others. Falco. Gustav reached out to touch him. Wake you. The moment his hand made contact with Falco's body, he quickly retracted it. What the... He stared at his hand. After the retraction, a couple of fingers had webs of darkness climbing up like they were alive. Cold, deep, and icy coldness. This was what Gustav felt when he made contact with Falco's body. Falco's body looked absolutely normal except for the rope of darkness his slightly ajar mouth emitted. Yet his body was extremely cold to touch and corrosive. Regeneration has been activated. Even with regeneration, it took more than a few seconds for the corrosive darkness to vanish from Gustav's fingertips. What is it? I heard the noise. What happened? Is Falco all right? Everyone was arriving together, and could see Gustav standing before Falco's bed with a concerning look. Is he? Angie reached out to touch Falco. Pa. Gustav grabbed her hand before she could make contact with his skin. What is it? She questioned. Don't touch him, his body is corrosive, Gustav answered. Angie slowly retracted with a bothered look as well. Something is wrong with Falco. I don't know what it is, but I can tell it is serious, Gustav stated with a serious tone. Is his body only corrosive to the touch of living beings? His bed seems to still be okay, Eldris asked while furrowing his eyebrows despite his eyes still being closed. No. That is because Gustav slightly crouched as he reached out to touch the bed. Why, he pulled the bed from underneath Falco's body, sweeping it to the other side of the room. Whoa, he exclaimed as everyone stared at Falco's body levitating in place. It turned out that Falco's body was floating less than an inch above the bed all this time, so it was easy to think he was laying on it. What do we do now? How do we figure out exactly what is wrong with him? and Angie questioned in successions. Maybe we should try to wake him up, Timmy suggested. Falco. Almost everyone began to yell his name at this point. Some of them threw things at his levitating body, while some conjured non-lethal abilities to use on him. No matter how much they tried, they were unable to wake Falco. Everything that came into contact with him corroded before their very eyes. Gustav wasn't the only one that had issues sensing Falco's presence. For the others, it was like Falco wasn't here at all. They could only confirm Falco's presence with their eyes, but not their senses. This is serious. I think we should inform Grand Commander Cheyenne, Eldris suggested. There wasn't much they could do anyways, since this predicament seemed to be too much for them right now. If things were normal, Falco would have awoken but this was obviously not in any way normal. While all of this was causing a ruckus, Gustav was unaware that Falco was currently in the process of accepting the crown because of him. The voice had mimicked Gustav's appearance and showed up to Falco in a realistic dream earlier, advising him to accept the power of the crown. Everything had been extremely realistic, as the voice had mirrored Gustav's character almost perfectly from Falco's memories. Grand Commander Cheyenne, Miss Amy, and the other MBO officers on planet Ozius soon arrived at the accommodation area. I think you should take a look at Snovel. Comfy had been briefed about the situation through communication channels, but when they arrived, they realized that things were worse than they had expected. Not even Grand Commander Cheyenne could touch Falco without suffering the corrosive effect. Miss Amy had to create something to move Falco in so he could be studied better in a place with proper equipments. At the moment, they had no idea what was wrong with him, but Gustav already had his suspicions. Time went by in a flash, and the night before the next challenge arrived. During the last 2 days, Gustav had spent his time trying to figure out what happened with Falco and what Endrick was hiding from him. Both endeavors ended up not being fruitful. Falco had been in the same state for the last 2 days, with everyone unable to figure out exactly what was wrong with him, while Endrick repeated the same thing about being unable to decipher if what he saw was for Gustav. For Falco's situation, Gustav's major suspicion was linked to the crown he was supposed to accept. Still, despite the fact that he had this suspicion, he really couldn't do anything. Gustav felt extremely powerless at the moment, and finally decided to tell Miss Amy about what happened in Arabia City and how he felt it was linked to this. "Are you saying that kid might not be a mixed blood?" Miss Amy questioned after hearing Gustav narrate the occurrences so far. "I don't know, but I feel he has a different identity, like how the system, and that other being, Husarius, says. In the outworldly, whatever that means," Gustav responded while holding his chin. This is more complex than I expected. That crown, you said the kid would change if he accepted it, right?" Miss Amy inquired. "That is what his alter ego mentioned, although I don't think that was his alter ego now." "I think he was there to protect him," Gustav replied. "If the kid is truly in the process of accepting the crown like you think, there are only 2 options left," Miss Amy voiced. "Which are?" Gustav's eyes shone with curiosity. "We either stop the process or we kill him," Miss Amy stated with an undisturbed tone. "I prefer the former to the latter," Gustav immediately pointed out. "And what if the former doesn't work?" Miss Amy asked. "Well, keep trying, I guess," Gustav voiced. "No, if the former doesn't work, we move you the latter," Miss Amy stated. Now, Miss Amy, don't be like that. Let's just try to stop the process. If it is ongoing," Gustav voiced with a pleading tone. "It'll reach out to an old friend with power mental abilities. They should be able to reach into the subconscious of the kid and find a way to help him." Miss Amy came to a decision. "Really? Phew, that would be great." Gustav let out a breath of relief upon hearing that. Miss Amy, "Thank you," Gustav voiced from behind. She paused and slowly turned around with a beautiful smile on her face. "Anything for you." Her figure blurred in the next instant, and she vanished. Gustav looked a little relieved after this conversation, but he recalled something. 2 days left on the timer. "It's time I found out if these guys are linked to it." Gustav tapped on his left wrist. In the next instant, the dimensional bracelet beamed up, and in the next few moments it emitted a flash of blue light, and Gustav vanished. The next morning everyone was gathered in the arena once more. Cheers, chatter. Cheers, the entire place was noisy as usual with the millions of spectators gathered around this magnificent structured location. The number of ISOP participants had reduced to 5,000, but the spectators were still as many as ever. Handler One's podium rose once more as he prepared to address the entire arena. The place slowly quietened the moment he began speaking. "The next major challenge will begin soon." Handler One pointed at the screens, which went on to display the wheel. The wheel had only a few parts that were marked undone at this point, so the spectators as well as participants could count with one hand the options left. Zrira, the wheel began spinning, and after a couple of moments, the arrow was positioned on the image of a tower of sorts. "The Heaven Monolith Challenge." Handler One's voice reverberated across the arena. "The Heaven what now?" Eyebrows twitched as he voiced out. Chapter 1286S. In this challenge, the participants are tasked with reaching the top of the monolith, or rather specifically their captains. There are 200 slots available at the top of the monolith, and to successfully pass this challenge, a captain must make sure to acquire one of the 200 slots. It goes without a saying that the 50 who fail to acquire a slot at the top of the monolith will be disqualified. Handler One explained lengthily, "I don't think that is the case." "Listen," Gustav responded. "The captains are required to take a slot upon arrival at the top of the monolith because it will not be counted if a normal member of the team or a vice captain does so in their stead. Everyone in the team is required to do their best to get their captain to the top before the others. There is no time limit. The challenge comes to an end when all slots have been taken, Handler 1 went on to say. This challenge will be over very quickly. Yonda shook his head. Most people felt so too. It was practically just a climbing exercise. So they thought. Troyan, the screens went on to display a live footage of the monolith they were meant to scale. What the... Everyone displayed looks of bafflement as whatever camera that seemed to be recording this slowly tilted to show how large it was. The monolith was like a pillar with very smooth surface that extended so high. The footage couldn't display all of it from below. The display of the footage was currently ascending along with the massive monolith. The bottom area seemed to cover a radius of more than 4,000 feet, but as it seemed to get thinner, the higher the footage covered. In a bit, the spectators could see that it had pierced through the conducive atmosphere of planet Osius and extended into outer space. Well, damn, this must be why it is called the Heaven Monolith, Teamy voiced. But none of us is capable of breathing in outer space without a space suit, Matilda stated with a baffled tone. They'll probably provide us with gear, E said. Outer space gear will not be provided. Participants are expected to be resilient enough to deal with the arduous situation using their abilities alone. Handler, one loud voice, instantly dashed their hopes. Dash, what the hell? How are we supposed to survive? Dash, some planetary species can breathe in space because of their genes. This is unfair to those of us who weren't born that way. Dash, this is totally unfair. A lot of participants began to yell loud in protest. Handler 1 paused for a bit before speaking. There is no unfairness in this. It is simply a part of their ability if they were born that way. No changes shall be made in regards to this, the handler stated without a shred of sympathy. Some participants still kept chattering on and voicing out their dissatisfaction, but Handler 1 continued regardless. The monolith has 5 layers, and a person from a group has to be sacrificed at each layer to allow the continued movement of the others. There will be multiple challenges in climbing to the apex of the monolith, but I wish you all good luck in this endeavor, Handler 1 explained with an optimistic tone. Sacrificed? What does that mean? Angie eyebrows furrowed. Handler 1 went on to explain that by sacrifice, he meant one person would have to stay behind for the others to have access to continue climbing the monolith. Flight abilities were the only restrictions in this challenge. Participants were given a height jump limit as well. Everything else went. They could attack each other if they wanted, and use every other thing at their discretion to reach the top of the monolith. This challenge will be held on the first disc. Handler 1 ended the briefing with this. The first disc was the largest disc in the entirety of planet Osius. However, it was surprisingly the least populated out of all the discs. The atmosphere there was said to be incredibly rich, making all living inhabitants there naturally evolve quicker than any other species. According to rumors, one was closer to immortality the longer they stayed there, and the true ancients of planet Osius, who said to be some of the most powerful beings in existence, resided on the first layer. Gustav hadn't paid any heed to this since they arrived here because he didn't care about immortality. He wasn't looking to live forever. However, being on the first disc would be pretty interesting even if it was for a brief period. The outer space thing shouldn't be much of a problem, Gustav voiced to the others who were still worried. It just depends on how long you can hold your breath, he added. The challenge doesn't end till all 200 slots are filled, if I recall correctly. Eldris began speaking with a troubled expression. You're worried because we have no idea how long it would take for the 200 slots to be filled, Gustav pointed out. I think you should take a look at Snavel. Siomicronim. Yeah, what if it's longer than our ability to hold our breath? Eldris questioned. Let's focus on getting to the top first, since only captains are required to get the slot. It should be fine, Gustav assured them, but internally he also knew that Eldris' concern was not one to scoff out. The only option at the moment was to wing things. It was difficult to tell how things would turn out. Besides this, One had to also look out for those who would try to target captains. Since without captains a slot couldn't be acquired, captains were both the strength and weaknesses of a group. However, it went without us saying that some participants would definitely think twice before messing with a captain. They were captains for a reason. Zing, 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 zing. The participants were teleported in successions to the first disc, and soon the middle of the arena was completely empty. The screens above displayed the participants who had appeared before the monolith. The monolith is really very high. He bent his neck to the limit, trying to see the top, but it was impossible. It covered a height of more than 200,000 feet, which was why it had pierced through the atmospheric layers above into space. Under normal circumstances, people like Gustav and Angie could scale this height in a short duration, but this wasn't normal circumstances. The stair strapped to the sides of the monolith was more visible in person, and it was just as smooth as the rocky pillar itself. The width of the stairs could contain 20 people moving side by side, and they happened to curve around the monolith like snakes wrapping around their prey. At some areas on the monolith, the two stairways on the right and left intersected. A golden monolith. Never thought I'd see one in my lifetime, Matilda voiced with a tone of astonishment. Just imagine the price this would sell for on Earth, he said, nearly drooling from his mouth. We're here to climb, not rob an entire structure, dumbass. Timmy slapped Eb at the back of his head. Ouch, just food for thoughts, man. Eb winced lightly. Gustav could feel the atmosphere of the first disc. It was truly unlike anything he had felt before, and the others felt this as well. They could feel their bloods pumping and circulating at a much higher rate, the pores of their skin taking in the magical air of the vicinity. Host vitality is increasing. Host vitality is increasing. Host vitality is increasing. Gustav stared at the notifications at the corner of his sight. If things keep going this way, you may unlock a new ability, the system voiced. Does the atmosphere really have that much effect on living creatures? Gustav couldn't help but be astonished by this. Yes, but not just living creatures. Even non-living things are affected. The skies here were green and whitish. Constellations could be spotted in the distance, but there wasn't much anyone could see from this part of the first disc. Alevra placed her hand on the barrier that prevented them from going further. Every single participant currently waited while staring at the massive monolith. I declare the start of the Heaven Monolith Challenge. Handler One's voice suddenly rang out loudly. The instant the barrier vanished, everyone charged forward with intensity. Yaha, let's go. They were like angry mobs as they made their way across the golden planted grounds to the monolith up front. Since two different stairs were constructed on the right and left sides of the monolith, respectively, the mob soon split as they arrived before it. Gustav and the others immediately went right as they clustered together upon reaching the stairs. Fwy-eyed Gustav grabbed a green-faced alien on the right and flung him away the moment they arrived on the first stair. Chapter 1287 Gustav grabbed a green-faced alien on the right and flung him away the moment they arrived on the first stair. Go. They moved forward together, pushing through the crowd to get further ahead. It was really a sight to behold, as the participants began attacking one another due to the spaces on the stairs not being enough for everyone to move through at the same time. It was really a sight to behold, as the participants began attacking one another due to the spaces on the stairs not being enough for everyone to move through at the same time. Everyone wanted to be ahead, but they also needed to make sure they didn't separate from their captains. Some groups moved towards the smooth surface of the monolith and began climbing with their limbs attached to it instead of using the stairs. Some other planetary species tried to climb as well, but they soon realized it wasn't as easy as it looked. Its surface was incredibly smooth, so only species who knew how to stick their body to things or excrete liquid from their skins that would help them stick to the monolith could successfully climb. Gustav already canceled the thought of climbing before the challenge began. He knew it would be incredibly difficult and time-taking, so the stairs were the best option, especially if they were going to stick together. With the start of the new challenge, the entire arena was once more in a state of uproar. Lots of participants had already gotten kicked off the stairs from the very beginning, and some were still getting kicked off after making a bit of progress. If one got pushed off the stairs, they had to start again since flying wasn't allowed. This was even more frustrating for species with wings. It made their wings look useless. Out of my way! A massive Klaxosape swung, a giant 30-foot-long club, as he charged forward. Sweeia, the club cleared a bunch of participants on before them, sending a whole group of 20 flying. The Klaxosapes followed him closely from behind, letting their teammate clear the path. Fwaiei, he swung the massive club forward, once more at a bunch ahead, but the moment it arrived before the humanoid figure on the right, it was stopped. Bam! A hand had reached out to stop the massive club. HNNGHH! The Klaxosape groaned as he realized he was unable to pull his club backwards, but the moment the person who stopped the club turned to face him, he froze. Captain Crimson? His eyes widened as Gustav let go of the club, causing him to stagger backwards and lose his footing. He rolled down the stairs for a couple of feet before the other Klaxosapes caught him. They were about to question what the issue was when they spotted Gustav and the others ahead. "Watch where you're pointing that thing," Gustav voiced before running ahead to catch up with the others. The stairs were even more crowded at the bottom at this moment, as lots of participants had been sent off. Bang, bang, boom. All sorts or attacks were sent forth as participants attacked one another while trying to reclaim the stairs. At this point, Gustav and the others had scaled more than 2,000 stairs and were heading further upwards. Gustav would occasionally leap across 100 feet in a go with the others. They were extremely quick, but made sure not to cross the height limit when leaping. EE did the same as he conjured vortexes to cover short distances, since it would be against the rule if he used it to the fullest. Sreya, he conjured another vortex and stepped forward. The moment he arrived another 100 steps away, he sensed something. He muttered as he looked down to see a white glowing circle appear around his foot. Gustav and the others arrived a step behind EE, with conflicted expressions as a bright white glow surrounded the entire group. Zing, they all vanished in the next instant. The Earthlings are gone, Captain Kriv voiced with a surprised expression. Ha ha! That's what they get for being so prideful, the one who attacked Gustav earlier laughed. It doesn't matter, let's go, Captain Kriv voiced as he increased his pace. Be careful here. This is where they disappeared, the vice captain voiced as they made their way forward carefully and quickly. The others behind also quickened their pace, carefully crossing the area Earth participants had vanished from. Zing, Earth participants reappeared at the bottom of the monolith. What the hell? What did you do? I think you should take a look at Snavel. The group yelled in fury as they realized what just happened. I don't know. He had a baffled expression as he voiced. It's not his fault. Anyone would have fallen into that. Gustav stopped the others from berating him. Indeed, even though Handler 1 mentioned that we'd meet different obstacles, there was no way to know what to expect, Eldris chimed in. Let's get back up there, Gustav stated while turning towards the start of the stairs on the right. It was still crowded with loads of participants, and now they were behind everyone. Gustav charged forward in the next instant, speeding through the midst of 2 participants that were in a heated battle. Whoosh, the wind generated from his speed was like a slap to their faces as they just realized what happened. Hey! They both yelled out at the same time and turned to face the direction Gustav headed, in only for 3 others to sped past them as well. Whoosh, 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 Galevra, and Sheila leapt over them, causing the 2 to look up in bafflement, but at this point didn't even know who to focus on. Up ahead, Gustav could see that they were more than 400 participants in heated battles, crowding where the stairs began. There was not even a bit of space to pass through as attacks dispersed across the vicinity powerfully. Gustav uttered calmly as he approached the crowd. Got it, he voiced in response as he raised his right hand and twirled his index and middle together. Sweaya, a massive vortex suddenly opened up below, covering the entirety of the beginning stairway. Weawa, every single participant crowding the place, fell into the vortex, which closed up after swallowing them all. What the hell? The other participants behind who were battling with one another stopped after witnessing this. Without wasting a second more, they charged forward. Now that the stairways were free, this was a great opportunity to climb. Zrih, a massive vortex, opened up hundreds of feet behind the monolith, vomiting over 400 participants upon its appearance. Those bastard earthlings. Damn it, get to the stairway, hurry. They all quickly collected themselves with tones of annoyances as they charged at the monolith ahead. At the moment, Gustav and the others were making their way across the stairs once more. They moved very quickly, and since they already covered this area earlier, they were not worried about activating any traps. Angie, of course, had to move slower due to everyone else being slow. They had to scale the monolith as a group. They soon crossed the distance of more than 5,000 stairs and began closing in on the area where EE had activated the trap earlier. Be careful of where you step and follow my footing, Gustava announced as he scaled another 300 stairs in an instant. The group made sure to always land where he is. Since their speed wasn't hindered, the group could move very quickly in a single step. Crossing 1,000 stairs wasn't a problem, but doing so without your feet touching a single stair in the process would result in disqualification. The restrictions for this challenge ultimately caused everyone's speed to be reduced. Gustav leapt past the area where EE initially triggered the trap and kept moving. God Eyes was currently activated to look out for traps, but Gustav wasn't very confident in its abilities at the moment. The way the trap was activated made Gustav suspicious about being unable to tell if a step had a trap beforehand. On the bright side, he could see the footsteps of the other participants who had gone before them through God Eyes, so he made sure to follow these footsteps. Since the others ahead hadn't encountered the same situation, yet it meant following their steps wouldn't be a problem. After a couple more minutes, they had scaled more than 50,000 stairs. Gustav was still following the footsteps when he suddenly paused. Stop, Gustav voiced. The footsteps are no longer visible. Something happened, Gustav said internally as he looked upwards. His sight zoomed across a distance of 5,000 feet, and he soon understood why this was the case. We just finished scaling the first layer, Gustav announced. Chapter 1288. We just finished scaling the first layer, Gustav announced. Oh, sweet. That was easier than I expected. The group faces shone with a bit of relief after hearing this. Once we move up ahead, we'll arrive at the bridge before the first and second layer, and one person would have to stay at the entry point of the second layer for everyone else to get past, Gustav explained. Oh, how do we get there now? Timmy asked. We just do this, I guess, Gustav stated while stepping forward. In the next moment, the stairway before them completely flattened, turning steep. A rectangular opening appeared before them, and the group proceeded to walk in. Within this opening was a small space where smoothened out walls at the west and east corner. Up ahead was a golden, glowing pathway, which led further forward. The group wasted no time in stepping forward and walked till they arrived at the end of the golden, glowing pathway. At what was presumed to be the end of the pathway was a cave-like opening on the left and a glowing doorway on the right. Two signs could be spotted on the right and left top corners. Sacrifice, squinting eyes face. Access, Gustav interpreted the meaning of the signs, and everyone immediately understood that the cave-like dark opening was the path that belonged to the teammate who was supposed to stay behind to provide access for the rest of the group. Timmy reached out to touch the glowing doorway that had the access sign, but couldn't get through. An invisible barrier stopped everyone from going through, and as Handler 1 mentioned, they wouldn't get access till a teammate sacrificed themselves. Abestos, you're up, Gustav stated. Abestos nodded with any arguments and turned towards the left. Everyone watched as he approached the dimly lit cave-like opening and walked through a moment later. ZZHRRIUH, reddish rays scanned across his body the moment he walked through, and everyone waited. It's still sealed, Timmy stated after sticking his hand out to touch the glowing doorway up ahead. Mental manipulation has been activated. Gustav decided to send Abestos a mind message after waiting for a couple of seconds more. Any issues? Yeah, just a little, but I took care of them already. Oh, I've gotten to the end. The barrier should be lifted for you guys soon, all right? Good job. Thanks, Captain. What caused the delay, though? Gustav and Abestos ended communication after a few, and now he was aware of a new information. Handler 1 is pretty sneaky. Gustav chuckled. What's that? E questioned. Let's go, Gustav voiced before stepping forward. Everyone had looks of surprise when he stepped through the glowing doorway undisturbed. They didn't realize the barrier was already lifted. They wasted no time in following after Gustav. When the last person was about walking through, 2 groups were arriving behind. When they noticed Gustav's teammates moving into the glowing doorway, they sped forward with intensity. Huh? Shurama noticed them and furrowed her eyebrows as they arrived at the doorway. Bam, bam, bam. She didn't even bother attacking them. The group slammed into a barrier before they could reach the doorway. Looks like it's selective and knows who to keep out so long as the conditions have not been met. Shurama scoffed before stepping through the glowing doorway undisturbed. Gustav walked out of the light and noticed he had arrived at the base of next layer of the monolith. This place was more than 40,000 feet above the ground, but it was leveled and rounded around the monolith like a floor. Just like the bottom of the monolith, the beginning of 2 stairways could be spotted on the right and left. One couldn't go back because a barrier was set in place that prevented such. If anyone fell off the stairs after climbing for a bit, they would only start from the base of the second layer again, instead of the bottom of the monolith. Arf! A series of loud screams were heard from above as a massive metallic-looking ball came cascading down the left stairway. Throyoyua, I think you should take a look at Snovel. Kabam! Soon they arrived back at the base of the second layer as the massive metallic ball rolled off the edge after achieving its objective. The group cursed as they realized they had returned to the start of the second layer. It seemed like they triggered a trap like EE did on the first layer. Right it is, Gustav voiced as he turned towards the right stairway. The others who had appeared beside him followed in line. They began making their way upwards with speed. Swoosh! There are at least 50 groups ahead of us, but we can't assume we're safe since we don't know what to expect yet, Gustav voiced as all 19 participants ascended across the stairway. At this point, they were starting to reach the upper atmosphere of planet Osius' first disk. The cold wind circulating across the area was a little intense, but the group could handle it. For reasons unknown to the rest, the gravitational force remained the same, even though they were closing on space at this height. Gustav had God eyes activated, so could see that the reasons there were no changes to the gravitational state was due to the gigantic monolith. It seemed to be negating the effect space would usually have. As the group climbed further, the fog gathering around them increased. At this point, no one could see the lower parts of the monolith anymore, since they had reached a height of nearly 100 feet. The fog was becoming denser, like its aim was to separate teammates from each other. Fortunately, God eyes made this impossible, as Gustav could see his teammates easily, and even without God eyes, his perception made it so no one was able to escape his range of detection. Gustav sensed something the moment he scaled 93,000 steps. Pa! He reached towards the left and pushed Angie away. The moment he did so, Angie slipped and tumbled backwards for a couple of feet. Endrick, who was a few steps behind, caught her before she tumbled further. The moment her feet stabbed, she noticed Gustav up ahead gesturing for everyone to stop. Some footsteps disappeared, and some are all the way up there instead, Gustav announced. Traps? EE inquired. Most likely probably got a couple of groups, but not all were activated. Some are still in place. You nearly triggered on Angie, Gustav responded. It turned out that where you stepped on a particular stair mattered. Gustav didn't trigger any, but if Angie had managed to step beside him, she would have. Thankfully, she watered down her speed. From the start, Gustav raised his arm and waved it around forcefully. Whoosh, a strong wind was generated from his arm, which immediately cleared the fog, covering a distance of more than 2,000 feet. Well, go one after the other here, wait, and follow after the next person exacts footsteps, which should follow mine, Gustav instructed. He proceeded to leap across 300 steps in the next instant. Since this was the furthest, they could go with it. He carefully navigated his way forward as he leapt further again, arriving at the far right of the next 300 stairs. E.E. immediately followed behind, pacing himself properly to Gustav's speed. Alevra followed behind E.E., and Sheila followed behind her. Going up one after the other was, of course, taking a bit of time. But Gustav felt this was better than having to trigger any trap, and he could tell there were traps all across the next 3,000 steps, so he was trying to be as careful as possible. Ealdris waited until everyone else had stepped forward before he did. However, since it had taken some time, a couple of groups were arriving from behind. One of them sped forward with an unhinged, condescending expression as they passed by Ealdris' side. Ealdris was going to warn the participant, as well as the group behind him, when T-H-R-A-I-H-H-H-H-H, a massive stroke of lightning descended from above. Arf! The participant screamed in agony as the smell of cooked flesh permeated the air. Unfortunately, this wasn't the end, as two more lightning streaks descended on this participant before they disappeared. A cloud above streaked with red lightning streaks, and Ealdris saw this as his cue to leave before he was mistaken for the teammate of the victimized participant. So whoosh, he crossed 300 steps in an instant, but paused the next moment. Where did they? Oh, mine. Ealdris could sense that whoever left before him was long gone, so he had no idea where exactly he was supposed to land. Next, since he had been paying attention to the participant that was getting struck by lightning earlier. On the other side of the monolith stairs, the Draconites made their way forward undisturbed. Pa, 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 pa. The sound of their giant feet stamping heavily against the stairs reverberated across the vicinity. Chapter 1289. Don't push your luck? Matilda rolled her eyes. While you two are making a lot of sense, there is one vital information are unaware of. I will be needing Ealdris due to this vital information, as he is one of the few I trust to be capable of handling the task when it comes in the future, Gustav responded. What can he do that the rest of us can't? Yonda questioned with a dissatisfied glare. A lot, Gustav replied before jumping downwards. FYI, his body descended with speed as the wind brushed his hair upwards, leaping further than a particular number of feet or stairs WSS prohibited. But since Gustav was descending, there was no problem. It seemed like Guadav had been falling forever, since the distance between his initial location and the base of the second layer was more than 50,000 feet down. Gustav flipped his body in midair, nose diving to move faster as he cut across more distance within a couple of seconds in this posture. After about 1 more minute BAM, he landed between Ealdris and the last opponent. Gustav's right fist drove into jaw of the shocked participant before him. Bang! The body of the red-faced alien traveled across the air and slammed into the barrier on the edge of the second layer base. Crash! It broke through the barrier, and the body of the extraterrestrial being began to plump downwards uncontrollably. Overkill! I had him. A smile appeared on Ealdris' face as pulled out a flaming 4-feet spike from his shoulder. No doubt, Gustav responded before passing a med pill to Ealdris. What happened? He proceeded to ask Ealdris. Ealdris went on to explain how he got distracted by this bunch who were climbing the stairs without caring about traps. He was unable to warn them, and they all ended up getting sent to the base of the second layer. However, He had no idea how to pinpoint exactly where the last person who went before him stepped. Everyone was already far ahead. He managed to scale about 600 feet without triggering a trap when he torched the monolith in relief and triggered one unknowingly. He had no idea that the monolith walls had traps on them. Gustav was also quite surprised since he wasn't aware of bees as well. They just subconsciously refrained from touching the monolith while climbing the stairways. When he thought more about it, he felt it made sense since some participants directly climbed the monolith walls. The handlers must have already suspected this was possible and placed traps on them as well. "Don't get distracted this time," Gustav voiced while charging towards the right stairway. "Sure," Eldris replied while following closely behind. 4 hours later at this point, Gustav and the others were currently scaling the second layer. They had managed to go through the third layer without too much issues, but the moment they reached the second layer, everything changed. Not only were they now in outer space, the stairways no longer existed. Chapter 12, 94th Layer Obstacles. Not only were they now in outer space, the stairways no longer existed. The sight before them wasn't just the endless expanse of darkness with clusters of tiny lights in the distance. The stairway had turned completely panned out. It was smoothened and looked more like a path that extended upwards. This would have made things a lot easier, but now one could not even tell where the traps would be situated, and if everyone would be affected should a person trigger one. Another issue was there happened to be areas where the pathways were missing. The participants would have to leap towards wherever the sloppy pathways resumed. When they reached places like this, leaping wasn't much of a problem, but doing all of these while trying to fend off the illusionary maniacs with long whitish gown and paper box-covered faces would certainly make things a lot more difficult. These illusionary figured all had massive purplish scythes in their possession, and to make things worse, it was impossible to physically touch them, so one could only evade their strikes while they appeared randomly. Occasionally, the broken-off pathways that were laden across the monolith would vanish and reappear after some time. If someone was to leap towards a separate pathway, and they vanished at that moment, they would fall straight down to the start of the fourth layer. The second layer happened to be around 100,000 feet in height. With all the mechanisms in place, everyone had obstacles that would make them slower than normal, so starting again was something no one wanted. The group were currently holding their breath as they made their way forward as quickly as they could. At this moment, no group had successfully made it to the fifth layer yet. The second layer had too many obstacles in place. Gustav and the group were successful in crossing about 15,000 feet in just a few minutes, but once they arrived at a broken-off pathway, things started to get tricky. He conjured a vortex and was about to step in when Gustav grabbed his shoulder to pull him back. The pathway 700 feet above, where his vortex led to, suddenly vanished. "Yo, what the hell?" Eyes widened as he noticed this. The group were initially unaware of the vanishing pathways that would appear and reappear randomly. They were not allowed to leap past 700 feet, so they had to wait for the pathway to reappear before getting on it. The pathway above soon reappeared, and everyone turned towards Gustav waiting for his signal. "Not yet," Gustav voiced. "Out of my way, Earthlings." A group of white-scale, beastly-looking figures with massive horns approached from behind at full speed. FYI, they all leapt together towards the platform above, which only extended for about 10 feet. They had to leap again towards the next platform, which was further above, but the moment they did, the platform above vanished while they were still in midair. HNGGHH. One of them ripped one of his horns from his head, which proceeded to emit a blinding red glow, and stabbed it at the monolith to prevent fall. Tongue. The pointy tip of the horn slammed onto the monolith's smooth surface, but failed to scratch it in the slightest. Talk more of penetrating. It would take your strongest attack to cause a dent in the monolith. It has one of the toughest surfaces in the universe. The system voiced in Gustav's mind. "Yeah, I noticed it's pretty dense, Gustav was still astonished even till now. Buoyanting, a small ripple of energy burst forth from the monolith's wall and pushed the group further away as they plummeted downwards. Ergrai! The screams soon faded as the group disappeared into the clouds below. Yonda, who was about to speak earlier, swallowed his words. The platform above vanished once more, and Earth participants as well as other groups that witnessed what had just happened waited for a bit. When it reappeared, everyone stared at Gustav once more. Not yet, Gustav stated again. No one tried to question him, and they all just waited. Why are you guys also waiting? Fildhor asked the group behind. We're not trying to end up like those guys, one of them voiced, obviously referring to the group that plummeted to the bottom earlier. These guys. Fildhor had a stiff expression as he didn't want any of the groups following them. After waiting 2 more times for the pathway to vanish and reappear, there were already more than 100 participants behind the Earth group. Now, Gustav yelled while leaping forward. Thoam, the moment he ascended across the air. The others followed in suit. They didn't waste a single second, as the pathway below soon turned empty. Yash! They instantly landed on the next platform and leapt once more, approaching the second. Fwyi, the numbers ascending across the air at quick pace, caused the air to whoosh loudly like a whip lashing out. The group soon realized that there were about 10 different platforms separate from each other with 700 feet distances each. Their timing of choosing to jump had to be impeccable, or one of the platforms would vanish even after they had gotten past some, and they would eventually end up at the bottom. Gustav arrived at the 9th platform before everyone as expected, but the moment he did, the 10th platform vanished. The 10th platform would have been the last they would need to leap from before arriving at a consistent pathway that led further ahead without separation, but now it was gone. Connect! Gustav yelled as he turned to stretch his hand out. The group grabbed each other's palm immediately as Gustav leapt sideways. Sprint has been activated. Tuhush, his figure sped across the smooth surface of the monolith walls as the others dangled from him, all holding onto each other. Gustav crossed a distance of 700 feet in an instant, but he could already feel his feet slipping off the extremely smoothened surface. Fwyi, he swung his right arm forward, causing the entire group to sway upwards while still holding onto each other. Now, Gustav was the last person, while Angie was at the forefront with their hands still connected to each other. Pa! Angie's feet touched on the surface of the smoothened wall, and now it was her turn. Fuhush, a burst of wind spread forth across the vicinity as Angie sped upwards at an extremely bizarre speed, dragging the rest of the group with her. Gustav's feet had already slid off the monolith walls at this point, but due to the hand connection and Angie's speed, he didn't fall off. Angie dragged everyone with her to the next pathway ANF. They arrived on it in the blink of an eye, leaving the other groups behind to cater for themselves. Phew, that was intense, EE voiced as they peered forward. I thought we would fall. Timmy and the others also had a look of relief on their faces. Let's go, Gustav said to everyone, unbothered about the fates of the groups behind them initially. Fortunately, a few of them managed to make it, but the others, not so much. Gustav and the others spent a whole hour scaling 50,000 feet due to the many obstacles along the way. Gustav had to be very calculating to avoid a lot of issues that could send them back, not just to the base of the 4th layer, but to the very start of the monolith. It already happened to some groups. Right now they were crossing another separate pathway, following after Gustav's lead. Whoosh! The moment Gustav leapt towards the consistent pathway that would lead further ahead without vanishing, a massive purplish scythe appeared before him. Bang! It had been completely unexpected, and Gustav had raised his left arm at the last moment to block the attack, but it was still powerful enough to change his trajectory in midair. Next thing everyone knew, Gustav's body was sweeping towards the right, off the direction to the pathway. Gustav! Angie yelled as the illusionary figure responsible for this attack retrieved his massive scythe and swung it towards the others. Whirrith, a vortex suddenly appeared before them and swallowed the whole group. They reappeared on the pathway ahead in the next instant and found Gustav standing up ahead as well. Thanks, E.E., Gustav voiced in appreciation. I don't think that guy is too happy about this, E.E. responded while pointing at the illusionary figure with a robe, a paper box-covered face, and massive glowing purplish scythe. The figure turned around and charged towards them swiftly. No, I don't think he is, Go. The group sped forward in the next instant while Gustav explained to them that it is impossible to physically damage these illusionary beings. They had to do their best to evade them, especially since these beings had very powerful attacks. Follow current novels on topnovelful.com. Chapter 1290. 1. They had to do their best to evade them, especially since these beings had very powerful attacks. The group steadily made their way upwards as swiftly as they could, occasionally coming into contact with multiple groups. Fortunately, the illusionary figures weren't as quick as most of them. They were successful in avoiding most of their attacks. The only problem with encountering these beings was they could appear at any time and anywhere. With the way they appeared out of the blue, most participants couldn't see their attacks coming. Fortunately, the Earth group had someone like E.E. on their side, so occasionally he would open vortexes to help anyone that was blasted off the ascending pathways. After crossing another 40,000 feet, which took them around 2 hours, Earth group arrived at the end of the right pathway. Usually those would mean they would just have to leap upwards to arrive at the next attached pathway, but for reasons unknown, there was nothing above. The detached pathways were nowhere to be found, and the monolith continuously extended into the distant space. They met a couple of groups at this edge also waiting, and also spotted other groups stranded on the left pathways. The edge of the left pathways wasn't too far off on the side of the monolith. It looked like they would have intersected a bit further if both pathways didn't end here. Gustav immediately looked upwards. God Eyes has been activated. His sight zoomed into the distance, crossing the golden and smoothened surface of the monolith. 200 feet, 500 feet, 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet, 2,000 feet, 2,300 feet. The moment Gustav's sight zoomed past a distance of 2,300 feet, he spotted a detached golden platform with a bunch of participants standing on it. The Klaxosapes. Gustav murmured as he noticed that the Klaxosapes were being lifted across the monolith by this platform. The platform continued rising till it reached the 3,000 feet mark, and they arrived before a pathway that Gustav suspected led to the bridge between the 4th and 5th layer. It turned out that this ascending platform was one of the only 2 ways of getting to that height since flying, and leaping was not allowed. The only other way was if they could climb the monolith, and only a very few groups were capable of climbing the monolith at the moment. Earth participants wasn't one of them. Angie could succeed in running across the monolith surface to that height if she used her top speed, but since they were moving as a group, she couldn't do that. The surface was too smooth and could even be considered slippery for Gustav to successfully run across it to the required height, except he was as fast as Angie, which wasn't the case. Gustav could see that the platform had begun to descend, and upon closer look, there happened to be 2 golden platforms. Gustav could guess that one platform was supposed to hold participants from the left pathway edge, and the other was supposed to hold participants from the right. The Klaxosapes had made use of both due to their size, since one wouldn't be able to transport them both. While the groups at the edges waited for the platform to descend, Gustav briefed the others about the current predicament. They're aware, too, Gustav told the others. Oh, doesn't that mean it would turn into a brawl when it descends? Eldris questioned while staring at the intense expressions on the faces of the groups before them. It will, Gustav answered. At this point, more groups had arrived behind them, and before they knew it, around 300 participants crowded the edge of the pathways. Dash, hey, watch it. You stepped on me. Dash, you watch it, Pipsqueak. Dash, I will send you to the bottom of the 4th layer. The air was getting tensed, and the participants aggravated as they began to push one another. About 4 planets here were amongst the top 20, Earth included. These planets were the ones everyone was truly wary about. Zillion, Oxork, Orion, and Earth. It's coming, Gustav muttered as he spotted the platform less than 700 feet away as it descended. The group faces instantly turned serious as they leapt forward. Fwyi, not so fast, Earthings. The group of Zillions in velvet-like armors covering their entire figure also leapt upwards at this moment. We're also here, the upside-down cone-headed Oxorkiks voiced loudly as the holes in their chest glowed brightly. No one was willing to let anyone go before them. Everyone wanted to be the next group to climb the golden platform. Gustav and the others knew they would have fight their way up there just like the Klaxosapes did as well. Tuash, I think you should take a look at Snavel. C Omicron M Rho Alpha N D Alpha S Nu Omicron V Epsilon L Mvrii, a vortex opened up, swallowing all 17 Earth participants in an instant, and they arrived on the descending platform. The Zillion participants in mid-air conjured massive blades and slashed out at the powerful crimson beams shot at them. Orion participants, on the other hand, grabbed the floating fluorescent halo above their heads and swung it forward at the platform. Fui, the circular glowing weapon streaked across the air, arriving before Earth participants in an instant. Cosmic Finger, Spectrum Bind, Purple Destruction. Yonda, Eldris, and Alevra voiced at the same time as they immediately took care of 3 of these flying halos. Endrick, on the other hand, conjured a telekinetic barrier that prevented 2 from nearly decapitating EE and Teamy, who were a little slower in reacting due to the speed of the halos. You thanks, Endrick! EE let out a sigh of relief as the halo continuously circulated just a few inches from his face without being able to move further. Gustav, who was at the left edge of the first platform, reached out and grabbed one before him, sinking his fingers into the middle of the glowing circular fluorescent weapon. A loud sizzling sound rang out. SS Krivviel, Planet Klaxosape, versus Gustav Crimson, Planet Earth. Captain Kriv and Gustav had a brief stare-down within this vicinity of destruction as a gigantic spacecraft got blasted down from above. The spacecraft descended towards them, but before it could completely crash, both figures moved. Swayup Gustav's figure turned blurry as he charged at Captain Kriv, who also charged vigorously at him as well. Gustav arched his right arm backwards, while clenching his fist strongly as he arrived before the massive and muscular pointy rock-like being. It was like an ant charging at a grasshopper, as both figures arrived before each other, while the spacecraft descending was only a couple of feet away from crashing onto them. Gustav swung his clenched fist at Captain Kriv, who also threw his fist downwards at Gustav's minuscule-looking figure. Boom! Both fists collided in the next instant, causing a powerful surge of energy to rip across the vicinity. Bang! The force generated from the collision blasted into the spacecraft descending from above, causing it to shoot in another direction, forcefully, while parts of it dislodged from one another. Bang! 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 Other scraped items and structures in the vicinity were hit, as well as the shock waves spread across the entire stage while the ground caved, and the barrier surrounding the battle stage flickered intensely. From the first clash alone, spectators had their jaws dropping from the physical strength these two displayed. Both figures had slid back upon collision, but immediately charged at each other once more without a moment of rest. Bang! 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 Boom! 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 Ripples repeatedly blasted across the vicinity as Gustav and Captain Kriv clashed an uncountable number of times. Despite Captain Kriv's size, his speed was not lacking as he traded furious blows with Gustav that had turned blurry to the audience. Reinforced the barrier surrounding their stage, Handler 1 instructed one of the handlers around him. But it already has 5 layers of reinforcement, the handler reminded. Just do it, make it 10. Just as Handler 1 said this, the first layer of the barrier blasted to pieces. The second layer, which was more powerful, instantly kicked in, protecting the surroundings and other parts of the arena from the impact of these two battles. On the stage, Gustav was constantly pushed back as they traded blows. There was no doubt that Captain Kriv was stronger physically. Each punch to Gustav felt like he was taking on the force of multiple fast-moving moons. "Are you insulting me, Earthling? I told you not to hold back." "Yeah," Captain Kriv voiced as he tightened his massive fist furiously and threw a punch forward that was 3 times more powerful than the previous ones. Flyish dash has been activated. Gustav's figure suddenly blurred as he appeared behind Captain Kriv the moment he swung his fist forward. "Like I said, as you wish," Gustav's voiced as he threw a fist forward from behind with intensity. Captain Kriv only realized he had missed at the last moment, but his defense kicked in subconsciously as his pointy rocky back made rattling sounds as they twisted and connected to each other. Chapter 1292. Yes, Orimon, we can use it now. In the next instant, their transparent skins emitted a dark blue glow as weird markings appeared on their skins. Feather flutter. A burst of wind bursted forth from their figures as the Zionsis charged forward. Fwyi, it was like their figures had become as light as wind as they sped across the surface of the monolith. Their figures traveled across its smooth surface with ease as they crossed a very long distance in a few seconds. The other participants in the vicinity had shocked looks as the Zionsis disappeared from view in just a couple of moments. They were now unhindered by the manner in which the monolith was structured, while the others had to head for the pathways. Gustav and the others had arrived at the bridge between the 4th and 5th layer at this moment. They once more found themselves walking through a golden path that led to a glowing doorway and a darkened cave-like opening. "Eldris, you're up," Gustav voiced as they reached this area. Eldris? Wouldn't it be better to send someone else?" Matilda questioned from the side. "No, it has to be Eldris this time. He's the only one I trust that is capable of taking care of it," Gustav said with a cryptic tone. Eldris didn't question Gustav's decision and began walking towards the dimly lit cave-like entrance. "I have no doubt that some groups will get stranded even if they reach here," Gustav stated. "Why though? Don't they just need to sacrifice a teammate?" Teamy questioned. "It's not that simple. It hasn't been since the start. Handler 1 didn't give us the full information," Gustav responded, causing their faces to light up in bafflement. At the moment, Eldris was already walking through a dimly lit pathway within the dark cave-like entrance. Up ahead, he could spot multiple other alien participants, as well as cryogenic-like chambers where the sacrifices were supposed to move into. Eldris arrived before one of the empty cryogenic-like chamber and placed his hand on it. Reddish rays shot forth from a part of the chamber which scanned the entirety of Eldris' figure, and in the next instant the projection of a blue glowing planet appeared on the chamber's surface. "Earth!" The surface displayed the words while opening up. Thaish Eldris proceeded to walk in, and immediately got strapped as a gas permeated the internal structure of the chamber while it closed up. Eldris soon went into a state of deep sleep and found himself in a different world entirely. Within this world, he was required to get to the heart of Storm where an access panel was located. "It sure is taking longer this time," Yonda voiced. "Give it time. Eldris will get it," Gustav stated with a tone of confidence. They had heard Gustav's explanation of why he had to make use of Eldris now, but Yonda somehow still expected things to be easy. Every bridge where a person had to be sacrificed, there would be challenges the sacrificed participant would have to scale. After scaling the required challenge, the rest of the planetary group would have access to the glowing doorway. Gustav knew about this since the first layer due to Abestos. He had spoken to Abestos through mental connection and knew exactly what he faced there. The reason Gustav knew Eldris would be needed was due to the fact that with every layer, The challenge of the sacrificial lamb got tougher. He didn't trust anyone else with the task, since failure would make them get stranded here unless they decided to sacrifice another teammate. At this point, more groups were arriving in this location, and not a single planet had managed to go through even after 30 minutes had gone by. I think you should take a look at Snavel. C Omicron M Rho Alpha N D Alpha S Nu Omicron V Epsilon L Omicron M. If anyone runs out of breath, they are free to drop out of the challenge. Gustav wasn't entirely bothered since he was the only one that needed to get to the peak. Teammates were pretty much only needed for sacrifice, and there were still up to 17 of them here. One group got access in a few and went through the doorway. The frustration on Yonda's face increased after 2 more got access, but at this point the bridge was crowded with nearly 400 participants. "It is done," Gustav voiced while moving forward. The moment his body phased through the doorway, the others followed in suite with expressions of relief. They instantly arrived at the base of the 5th layer and began trotting forward. The 5th layer only had a few differences from the 4th layer, and one of them was the fact that they would have to scale up to 150,000 feet, with obstacles in place. One could tell this would take hours, and Gustav knew there were only a few teammates here who could stay more than 24 hours without taking a single breath. Things were about to get a little sketchy, but the aim was for him to get to the peak, and, at the moment, he was only 1 step away. "Will there be another bridge where we need to sacrifice another teammate? Who will you choose?" Timmy questioned from the side. "I don't think there'll be another bridge, since there is no 6th layer. I believe we just need to cross the 5th layer, and the peak will be right there," Gustav answered. "Still, I feel like things won't be so easy," Timmy responded. "Yeah, there's still a lot of groups before us, and some behind us have the advantage of moving faster, so we still have to pick up the pace," Gustav voiced while leaping off a detached platform. "Yeah, at our pace, a lot more participants might surpass us," Timmy stated while leaping forward as well. EE conjured a vortex and stepped in while everyone else leapt forward as well. "I could always just take you to the peak at top speed, and we'd get there pretty fast," Angie said to Gustav. "True, but then I don't know what to expect yet. I don't want to be taken by surprise." Gustav still wanted to play it safe and arrive at the peak with everyone instead of just himself. They hurried and managed to evade as many obstacles as possible. They were also trying to make sure they were fast enough to avoid clashes from other groups who didn't want to be surpassed or who wanted to surpass them from behind. Things were getting heated for the groups since this was the last layer of the monolith, and one mistake could make them lose a spot at the peak. Hours went by, and Earth's group managed to make it through 100,000 feet after much hurdles. Surpassing a group that had no issues with breathing had been an issue, as they conjured attacks without any problems and moved fluidly as opposed to Earth participants. Holding your lungs from inhaling any air was in itself an arduous process, so having to do that while fighting, evading, conjuring attacks, running, and talking just made things a whole lot more difficult. Fortunately, EE was still the best evasion weapon they had here, and he promptly worked to make sure most of the teammates weren't blasted off the pathways. As time went by, they began to close in on the peak, which had a blinding glow that was close to the brightness of a star up there. The closer they got, the more blinding the light became. There was no doubt that the monolith ended where the star glow was situated, and the participants moved even more faster this time. Battles became more frequent the higher they ascended, and Earth Group did their best to avoid getting into scuffles, as it was the last thing anyone needed right now. Either ways, the other groups were on edge and had no idea how many groups were before them. Since they couldn't tell if the number of groups before them were up to 200, they showed hostility towards any group they bumped into. Almost everyone behind was trying to blast everyone before them off the pathways to make room for themselves to get ahead. Gustav and the others were very close to the peak at this moment when a loud, whooshing sound whisked past them. Gustav had been a little surprised at first, since nobody was supposed to be able to climb up the monolith walls this fast, but before the group whisked past, his perception corrected that thought. This group weren't climbing, they were running up the walls. A feat that he knew only Angie was capable of performing was being done by this group, the Zionsis. Gustav was definitely surprised, but now wasn't the time to pay them any heed. The group was about to resume, heading forward, when an unexpected change occurred. FYI. Chapter 1293 FYI. One of the figures that sped past them earlier suddenly turned around and charged in their direction. Bang! A kick to the spleen sent Glade crashing off the pathway as one of the Zionsis landed before Timmy. He swiftly conjured a vortex as Glade's body fell off the edge. Her body sank into the vortex before she could fall too far, and she landed back on the pathway after the appearance of the vortex opening. "What is your deal?" Timmy yelled as the one responsible for kicking Glade off charged at him. Suffered just as he did, the 6-feet-tall, transparent-skinned being crashed his knee into Timmy's face before he could even conjure up an attack. "What the hell?" Fildhor yelled as he charged in the direction of the Zionsi participant, since he was the closest, while Timmy slid backwards. "What in the world is Orimon doing?" The Zionsi captain yelled as he noticed his subordinate had left their midst. "The Earthlings are ambushing him." Swywaya, I'm going to help." Before Captain Alumo could respond to any of these, 6 other subordinates turned around and sped downwards in the direction of the Earth participants. "I didn't tell." Captain Alumo had a frustrated expression as he looked downwards. Orimon had acted on his own, and now these 5 as well. At this point, Orimon had been surrounded and attacks were coming his way from different directions when 6 other Zionsis arrived on the pathway. Whoosh! The Zionsis conjured a massive tornado with lightning arcs swimming within them in an instant, sending it forth at the Earthlings up ahead. Gustav decided to act at this point, although he couldn't understand why this group that had passed them easily suddenly decided to attack them when his group wasn't in their way. Atomic disintegration has been activated. His entire right arm was instantly coated in a milky glow as he swung his fist forward with intensity. A powerful wave of energy spread forth as his fist blasted through the tornado, causing it to split from the destructiveness of his fist. Bits from the tornado vanished, while the rest that had split turned into tornadoes of their own, spinning in the direction of the rest behind. Swiwa, one of the Zionsis, charged forward in a bid to help Orimon, who was already getting tossed around by Timmy's attacks behind. FYI, Gustav's hand suddenly appeared before the Zionsi participant, grabbing his entire face. BLM, Gustav spun and slammed this Zionsi into the monolith wall by the side, but the moment he did, a shockwave blasted forth from the monolith. Skriviv Gustav, and the Zionsi was sent flying over the edge of the ascending pathway, while the other 4 Zionsis behind sped forward to attack the rest of the Earth's participants. Since they were currently way faster than everyone, they immediately got Orimon from their midst while conjuring more attacks. Gustav Yell had called EE's attention to his plummeting figure. Furum, focused on conjuring another vortex to help Gustav while the others dealt with the rest of the Zionsis. "Since you're looking for a beating so bad, I'll give it to you," Timmy voiced as his eyes glowed reddish and his entire body got coated in a layer of red. His nose was currently bleeding due to the sudden, unexpected attacks from Orimon, but now he had lost it. Glade also stared forward with a look of anguish as a massive red sickle appeared in her grasp. "Die bastards!" she yelled while charging forward. Swiwa, at this moment, the captain of the Zionsis, landed in their midst. The pathway in between the Earth and Zionsis participant changed form as a massive wall ascended to stop Glade's attack. Bang! "I think you should take a look at Snavel." Comfy's sickle slammed into the wall, causing it to get cleaved in half, but before Glade could attack again, Captain Alumo raised his arms in defeat. "Wait, please," he yelled. The tip of Glade's massive sickle stopped just inches away from making contact with Captain Alumo's neck. "You have 5 seconds to dissuade me from ripping you and the others behind you to pieces," Glade stated with a bloodthirsty tone. At this point, the other Zionsis had landed behind their captain as well, and they totaled around 15 in number. I apologize for my subordinate's outburst. I believe he just attacked in a fit of rage without thinking it through, Captain Alumo voiced with a respectful tone while bowing slightly. What I done? Orimon was about to speak when Captain Alumo turned around and punched him in the gut. One of the Zionsis squatted with a look of concern beside him, trying to console him. Come on, Orimon. You shouldn't have done that, the vice captain berated him. Orimon's face had a look of unfairness on his face as liquid dripped from the side of his mouth due to the pain he was feeling from his gut. My subordinate is sorry, and he'll make sure to meet proper punishment later, Captain Alumo voiced with an apologetic tone, while Orimon remained on his knees, peering forward with a look of anguish. No, that smug look, I will not allow it this time. He glared at Timi and Glade ahead, who stared at each other in contemplation. Please forgive his outburst. I'm sure he didn't mean it, Captain Alumo voiced once more. I meant it, and more. Orimon screamed internally while remaining on his knees. The image of a particular person appeared in his mind, looking completely dried up on a sickbed. Orimon gnashed his teeth together as he looked downwards, and then spotted the ring-like trinket on one of his fingers. His face lit up with a devious look as he reached out to touch the trinket, which emitted a faint magenta glow. Do look past his taunts, Captain Alumo kept pleading. Timi and Glade turned around to stare at Gustav behind. It's up to you two to decide if you want to forgive them or not, Gustav stated. He realized the Zionsi participant named Orimon was the same person who kept challenging Timi and Glade over and over and over again during the Versus Battle Challenge. It was now obvious to everyone that this participant bore a grudge against both of them, which was why he just attacked out of the blue. But Gustav decided to leave the decision-making about the current predicament to Timi and Glade. They were the major ones affected after all. There was no doubt that Planet Zionsi was no match for them, so if Timi and Glade were to decide on dealing with them, Gustav would render support. Glade and Timi stared at each other once more in contemplation before Timi decided to speak. Well, if you can just tell that, before Timi could complete his sentence, an incredibly bright magenta glow burst forth from behind. Everyone's eyes widened, but it was too late. A massive blazing magenta-colored spear had appeared a few centimeters away from Timi's chest. It came with a powerful and unfathomable burst of energy that sent a charge across the premises, blasting every single participant within range off the pathway, except for its target Timi and the figure beside him, Glade. The dangerous outburst of residual energy spread forth across a wide range on this area of the monolith, hitting everyone squarely and forcing them off. It was a power like no other, unexpected, tremendous, and seemingly beyond what any ISOP participant was capable of. In that split second where everyone was sent flying and the massive spear inches away from Timi's chest, that power, Timi will die. Gustav's figure, which was also sent flying across the air, turned into a streak of lightning. Thrashaz, he materialized before Timi and the spear, pushing Timi backwards with his right hand as the spear drove into his chest vigorously. Thrive, Kairarhe. A blood-curdling scream that caused the entire vicinity to tremble immensely escaped Gustav's lips as he fell to his knees. He grabbed the blazing magenta-colored spear, which kept spinning and forcibly pushing forward to drill further into his chest. The burning sensation that permeated his chest caused his body to tremble from the intensity of the pain. He could feel it from the moment this spear tore through his chest. He was gone. His internal structure was getting flamed from the inside out. He could feel his strength draining and his organs getting snuffed out. The system's voice in his head was barely audible at this point. Unable to activate regeneration. Unable to activate regeneration. Unable to activate regeneration. Warning bells were not only ringing in his head, but notifications also popping up in his line of sight, which he could barely see at this point, since his vision was fading. Timmy slowly got up behind after getting pushed away and wanted to approach Gustav alongside Glade, when a loud laughter rippled across the vicinity. Haha, you cannot save him. So long as he is the target, the work of the spear is not done. You will be dying for nothing, Earth Captain. Chapter 1294. So I died. Haha, you cannot save him. So long as he is the target, the work of the spear is not done. You will be dying for nothing, Earth Captain. It came from Orimon up ahead, who unsurprisingly wasn't blasted away like the others. Gustav had faintly heard his words, and his mouth hung open to say something when the spear suddenly increased more in intensity, emitting brighter flame and drilling further into him. Thriv at this moment. Gustav lost strength completely as the massive magenta spear tore through his chest, leaving a massive hole within. As the blazing magenta-colored spear pierced through Gustav's chest completely and came out the back, it seemed to have decreased a little in intensity. However, it was still very much alive as it turned to point at its target in midair. Before the light in Gustav's eyes got snuffed out completely, he muttered a few words. Code IR. Glade, who was initially running towards Gustav, paused the moment those words drifted into her ears. Her eyes turned listless as she stood in place for a moment. Protect Timmy at the cost of your life. As these words left Gustav's mouth, he fell forward lifelessly, drowning in the pool of his own blood. At this same moment, the spear sliced through the air, once more, heading in Timmy's direction. Timmy's hand emitted a bright red glow as he pushed his palms forward. A burst of red energy spread across the vicinity, and in the next moment, the massive magenta spear got trapped in a cocoon of red mass. Timmy groaned as the cocoon struggled to keep the spear within while draining energy from it by causing time to speed up. The cocoon had the power to speed up the time of anything within. It was just like how Timmy could make things age from contact, but this happened to cover a wider range and was more powerful. However, it was taking a lot of bloodline energy from him. Timmy slid backwards as the wind blasting across the place was unable to be hindered. The spear energy was slowly decreasing in intensity from growing old, but Timmy's arms were starting to tremble. KRRYYYCHHH, KRRYCHHH. Cracks began to appear all over the reddish cocoon when Glade appeared beside Timmy. Without saying a word, she moved to Timmy's back and placed her hands on them. Timmy felt energy flow into him from behind as Glade combined her bloodline energy with his. As both their energies mixed, the cracks on the cocoon mended. The time-decaying energy within increased, intensely causing the magenta-colored spear to shrink swiftly. Orimon's eyes widened in disbelief as the spear soon vanished. Impossible. It's supposed to, he muttered with a deranged look. At this point, Timmy and Glade were breathing in and out profusely, while the cocoon deactivated. Timmy's arms and legs trembled as he stared at Gustav's corpse up ahead, and then glared at Orimon up ahead with unbridled anger building up from within. You're finished. His voice trembled as his eyes turned dark with hatred. Orimon shivered as he felt the intense bloodlust from Timmy and slowly moved backwards while touching the trinket wrapped around one of his fingers in confusion. All of a sudden, a bright magenta light bursted forth. Once more, Timmy's eyes widened as the spear reappeared inches away from his chest with the same full vigor as before. Wha Puch-Hai, a figure had appeared before him at the last moment, but the spear stabbed through this person, with the tip pushing halfway out of their back, and then proceeded to pierce through Timmy's chest as well. They were both sent flying as they collided with the monolith wall behind, and got hung there by the spear which tipped Momaged to pierce through the monolith surface. Blurgro, they both spat out blood, as their faces displayed an expression of torment. Timmy could feel his innards getting flamed as the blazing magenta-colored spear further drilled into them. Glade, WHYDDU. Timmy muttered weakly as he stared at the greenish-skinned female who was merged to him due to the spear. It W as Master's order. Glade stuttered as light got snuffed out of her eyes. Teemy's eyes were also getting heavy as he stared at Gustav's corpse up ahead. Even after death, you still tried to protect me. Tears ran down Teemy's face as his life flashed before his eyes. Darkness was slowly setting in for him, but he noticed something that caused his face to brighten a little in the face of death. A twitch. Ha ha! I got them. 2 for 1. Orimon began laughing with a look of craziness. The blazing magenta-colored spear at this point had been to decrease in intensity, since it had successfully met its target. It slowly vanished, causing Teemy and Glade to fall from the monolith's wall which they were initially hanging from. Teemy, Glade. Loud yells were heard from up behind, and these voices seemed to belong to Earth participants. They had managed to make their way up and sped forward with looks of disbelief and horror. Teemy, Teemy. Rhea yelled as he knelt before Teemy along with a couple others. His hands were soaked in blood as he kept shaking Teemy's body. Ealdris quickly brought out a pill and pushed it into Teemy's mouth. Core. He coughed out the pill instantly along with a mouthful of blood. It's too late, Teemy muttered weakly. Meanwhile, Angie was currently standing before Gustav's corpse with listless eyes. It looked like she was in a trance as she stood there. This is a dream, right? Tell me I'm dreaming. Angie slowly said to beside her. Was just as speechless as he stared at the giant hole in Gustav's back and the pool of blood that had gathered around his corpse. It's not. It cannot. Stuttered repeatedly, unable to find words, as a deep feeling of regret welled up from within. Vera knelt before Gustav's corpse as well, while some of the others stood in between Glade and Gustav's corpses, unable to believe their eyes. How could all 3 of them have met their end from one attack? Fildhor was unable to comprehend how this was even possible. A bone-chilling murderous intent spread across the vicinity as Angie turned around to stare at the transparent-skinned 6-foot figure ahead. You did this, didn't you? Angie's voice was colder than the Arctic as her hair began to float upwards due to the immense bloodline energy emitting from her figure. I didn't mean to. Orimon seemed to realize the situation he was in and quickly stepped backwards in fear. He was glad to have gotten his revenge for his brother, but now he could see he was in a situation he might never be able to get out from. He's alive. Varys Ois called out from behind, causing Angie to pause. Angie's coldness instantly vanished as she turned around. Gustav's fingers twitched repeatedly, confirming Vera's statement. Angie quickly reached down and turned Gustav over. Gustav's eyelashes, which were also blood-soaked, fluttered a couple of times before they finally sprang open. Angie and everyone's eyes were filled with astonishment and utter confusion. There was no doubt that they couldn't sense any life from Gustav earlier, but all of a sudden he came back to life. Gustav's eyes darted around as vision returned to him. Before he could completely access the current situation, Angie had wrapped her warm hands around his blood-soaked figure. I thought you were gone. Tears slid down her cheeks as she felt the pump of Gustav's heart against her chest. Gustav was unresponsive for a moment as his perception swept across the place. So I died. I see, he muttered as he slowly unfurled Angie's arms around his body and stood to his feet. There was not a hint of relief on Gustav's face as he silently stepped forward amidst the stares of everyone. He passed by Glade's corpse without a look of remorse of sympathy, but paused the moment he arrived before Teemy. SSS's physical energy is increasing by the second. The more this battle prolongs, the stronger he will get. Gustav also came to this realization using God Eyes. Sing, a 5-feet-long katana appeared in Gustav's grasp in the next instant, which instantly automatically unsheathed. Electric arcs could be seen swimming across the red blade, as it emitted a certain pressure the moment Gustav touched the hilt. This was the Jiko Hakai katana, and Gustav had decided to make use of it since he wanted to maintain a no direct contact battle. Gustav gathered energy as he raised the Jiko Hakai katana in a vertical format. The katana's red blade glowed brightly as the electric arcs swimming around it increased in length and intensity. Captain Kriv, who was trying to get up from up ahead, sensed another feeling of danger as he stared forward. The entire stage had been lit up in bright red as Gustav placed his second hand on the hilt of the katana before swinging it downwards with great might. Captain Kriv ignored the pain he was feeling and quickly jumped to his feet. Follow current novels on topnovelful.com. Chapter 1295. The air of tension and fear that spread across the place. Only one person could be responsible for this. It's not your fault. You did your best. I don't regret following you. It was the best venture of my life. Timmy's voiced weakly while Gustav listened attentively. I certainly would do it again if time was reversed. My only regret is not being able to continue this journey with you all. You guys are family to me. A trail of tear leaked down Timmy's eyes as his blood-soaked hand reached out to grab Gustav. Take my bloodline. I want you to put it to good use. Timmy's voice trailed off after saying this, and his hands fell weakly as he finally let out his last breath. Gustav stared at the massive charred hole in Timmy's chest and then proceeded to touch his corpse. His face was still as expressionless as his fingers made contact with Timmy's blood. Bloodline acquisition has been activated. Calculating host compatibility rate with Crimson Matter bloodline 0/100%, 24/100%, 52/100%, 79/1000%. Host compatibility with Crimson Matter is 91%. Does host wish to extract this bloodline? Yes/no. Everyone's gaze remained transfixed on Gustav's position. It seemed like they couldn't get their eyes off him as he remained in place for a few seconds before finally standing to his feet. Bloodline successfully acquired. Gustav moved towards Glade's corpse and performed the same action. Bloodline successfully acquired. Host has acquired 2 halves of a bloodline. Does host wish to merge them? Yes/no. At this moment, Gustav was no longer paying attention to the system notifications popping up by the left corner of his eyes. He slowly turned around as a silent rage began building within him. The monolith, which was a structure of great power and strength, trembled as he stared at Orimon up ahead. Now that you have achieved your objective, Gustav began stepping forward slowly. I hope you're prepared to meet your end in the most gruesome, painstaking way you can ever imagine. The more Gustav spoke, the greater the chill that spread across space. Everyone could feel an immense sense of dread spread across the vicinity that had them frozen in place. Their eyes had widened in fear as a dark and horrifying gloom weighed on their figure. Gustav wasn't facing them directly yet. The fear they felt was indescribable. They could only imagine how Orimon, who was the target of all this negative energy, could feel at the moment. I will grant you a such decorative and merciless end that will make even the devil weep in sympathy. Gustav kept speaking as he slowly stepped forward. The sound of his footsteps were incredibly haunting and sounded extremely loud, yet gentle to everyone in the vicinity. Even participants from other groups who were approaching this area had paused in fear because they could all feel it, the fear of death. Orimon's entire body quaked as his transparent skin produced sweat in great number. He couldn't even move an inch. All he could think at this moment was, this is the end. Not a single coherent thought made him feel he could escape things. A veil of darkish red aura was being emitting from Gustav's body at this point. It looked like an ancient demon was awakening as it casted darkness across this already dark part of space. Every single participant on the monolith wondered what was happening at this point, since the monolith's quake was increasing in intensity. Gustav slowly reached out his right hand as he approached Orimon with glowing red eyes. It felt like time was moving slow, but the truth was not much time had passed at all. This moment just happened to be so intense and gut-wrenching that every second felt like 1,000 seconds. Warning: host heart rate is increasing beyond safely threshold. Warning: host heart rate is increasing beyond safely threshold. Unable to calm host heart rate. I should stop him. Eldris gulped down saliva as he recalled they could get disqualified for purposely killing another participant. Unfortunately, he was unable to take a step forward, just like everyone. Sweat rolled down his back as his knees trembled. Meanwhile, Gustav had arrived before Orimon at this moment and was about to make contact with him. Zurich, all of a sudden Orimon vanished from his line of sight. I think you should take a look at Snavel. Gustav's eyebrows furrowed as he saw his hand grab thin air. He slowly turned to the side. Zrira, Zraya, Zrira handlers had appeared all over the monolith in large numbers. One of them stood about 20 feet away from Gustav with Orimon in his grasp. Give him back. A burst of wind spread forth from Gustav's being upon his utterance, causing the handler's robes to flap furiously. They could feel the pressure Gustav's presence emitted, and realized that things could get troublesome even with their arrival. Gustav Crimson, killing a participant knowingly is punishable by disqualification. Performing such an action is akin to the Earth forfeiting Aesop right now, the handler holding onto Orimon's figure voiced with a compelling tone in a bid to resolve things amicably. It doesn't matter. They will die, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. Gustav's voice was like a divine mandate, causing even the powerful handlers to tremble slightly. Such hatred-filled eyes. They were starting to doubt they would be able to get across to him. Fyi Gustav figure vanished and instantly reappeared before the handler. Bang! A fist drove into the handler's chest, sending him catapulting across space. Everyone's eyes widened as the spotted Orimon in Gustav's grasp. How did he? The handlers were in complete shock as well. Orimon was shivering in complete fear as Gustav held him by the neck like a chicken. Now, where was I? Gustav voiced as he held Orimon up. Swoosh, the handlers swooped in immediately, all holding onto different parts of Gustav's body to stop him from taking Orimon's life. Don't do it, Captain Crimson. They voiced while activating their powers to trap Gustav in place. Get off me! A burst of dark reddish energy blasted forth from Gustav's being, crashing heavily into all the handlers in the vicinity and sending them flying. What in the world? I was unable to imprint. One of the handlers muttered with a tone of shock as his body spiraled across space after the hit. Phew, the handlers were pretty powerful, so they had managed to stabilize their figures after some time and began swooping forward once more. However, Gustav had Orimon in his grasp and could end his life before they got to him. Gustav raised Orimon and stared him deep in the eyes, causing a new wave of fear to spread across his body. No one is going to save you from me, Gustav stated as his hands tightened around Orimon's neck. K.P. Orimon spluttered continuously while Gustav raised his second hand to perform an action. Swoosh, a trembling figure appeared behind him and held his arm before he could completely his action. Gus! Tav, the hold wasn't what stopped him at this moment. Instead, it was the female voice that had just called out his name. Timmy wouldn't have wanted us to get disqualified. He would have wanted us to win for him. Angie's entire body was trembling and sweaty, but she managed to squeeze out of these words, SSS Crimson, 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 Crimson. They had been completely astonished by this battle. It was way more spectacular and destructive than any other battle they had seen so far. Phew, what would have happened if Handler 1 didn't ask for the reinforcement of the barrier? One of the handlers stared at the destruction with a slight look of relief. 6 layers of barriers had been destroyed. Usually every stage had only 5, but Handler 1 had asked for this one to be reinforced with 5 extra layers after the battle began. Had this not been the case, one couldn't tell how the entire arena would have been affected. Gustav Crimson, planet Earth, wins 1,400 points attained, these two have to be the strongest captains for sure. Captain Kriv is the strongest physically even though he lost. How did Captain Crimson manage to win against that? Captain Crimson is a beast for sure. The spectators discussed about the battle as Gustav moved out of the stage while transforming back into his usual looks. The spectators wondered if any captain would have been able to survive such with Captain Kriv overpowered state. They couldn't imagine anyone winning even though they knew a couple of captains were assumed to be ranked on the same level of strength. At the last few minutes of the battle, Gustav had substituted himself with one of his energy siphoning spheres. Since he could conjure an empty energy sphere and make it invisible on command, he placed one quite a distance away and substituted with it when Captain Kriv was about to drive his fist into him. This substitution technically changed the whole scenario since the sphere absorbed the force from Captain Kriv's punch and then detonated at Gustav's command. Chapter 1296, Angie moved to his front and placed his face on her chest while hugging his body completely to hers. "It's not your fault. Don't blame yourself," she uttered words of comfort while rubbing his hair. She could feel wetness on her chest, but she didn't stop. She continuously stroked his hair, while also fighting tears that threatened to spill from her eyes. Timmy was one of the most unproblematic people in their circle besides Eldris. The only times he got mad was when any of them got hurt or suffered any type of injustice. It looked like he was never bothered by anything, but everyone knew this was far from the case. Timmy didn't like to act like he cared, yet he was one of the biggest softies amongst them, going as far to volunteer every time someone was needed to keep an eye on Falco since he got injured. Timmy always stood up for the others every situation where he had the chance, and despite coming from a background of wealth, he had never shown any form of pride. Rhea looked like he had taken the biggest hit amongst them all as he remained in a kneeling position before Timmy's corpse. They had known each other since when they were little, and although Rhea would mostly call Gustav his rival, Timmy was the person who emotionally held that position. "Didn't we have a bet on who would be stronger when we reached the age of 22? Rhea's tears fell uncontrollably like raindrops. Why have you chosen to let me win?" Rhea's lips quivered as he muttered. He placed his hand on Rhea's left shoulder without saying a word. They had all taken a hit from this, so they could only comfort each other. "I couldn't even move to stop him." EVS' other fist tightened in remorse as he stood in place briefly. He realized how fear had kept him in place, whereas Angie managed to overcome that and stopped Gustav before things got messy. A feeling of shame washed over him. If his friend lost it due to any unexpected situation, it was his job to always be ready to offer assistance in whatever manner that was needed depending on the situation. He felt he had failed by not being able to overcome the fear of death and dread that encapsulated the vicinity from Gustav's wrath. He had also sworn to be cool and collected even in the worst types of situation, since it was the best way he could render assistance, but he realized he had just failed. He decided to stop berating himself in the meantime, since this wasn't the place for self-reflection. He raised his head and stepped forward in the direction of the handlers. What is going to happen to him now? He just killed our teammate. How will you, the handlers, punish him? E questioned in successions with a calm tone. "First, we will investigate to discover if the attack was done with the intent to kill, or the death only happened accidentally," one of the handlers answered. ES' face instantly squeezed up the moment he heard that. "What do you guys mean by accidentally?" He spat. "That Zionci participant attacked with intention to kill." Matilda yelled from the side as she approached them. "What she said?" Sheila voiced as well from the side. "This hasn't been the first death since ISOP began. I believe the Earth is well aware that deaths occur in ISOP. We only meet punishment when the death was orchestrated intentionally. In a case where it is accidental, the team is given a strike. 2 strikes would, of course, lead to disqualification, but in this case we have to investigate before drawing a conclusion," the handler explained with an apologetic tone. You can't be serious. Alevera stated with a strong tone. What is there to investigate? Fildhor chimed in. Hey, Baldy, are you fucking blind? That bastard obviously did this intentionally. Yonda also yelled as well. Although he wasn't close to Teamy or Glade, they were still his fellow teammates, and he was getting sick of how things were playing out. This participant had grievances with the two who lost their lives here today. We are well aware that this wasn't done accidentally, E said. Investigations will have to be carried out first. That is just how things are done. If Earth participants have statements concerning the issue, they can visit the board to table them after the Monolith Challenge ends. After saying this, the handlers began to vanish one after the other. What happens now? E asked before the last one vanished. The rest sciences get to finish the challenge, but this one comes with us. Zing, after vanishing with Orimon, everyone had looks of anguish mixed their current mournful expressions. I think you should take a look at Snavel. Siamacronim, those bastards. How could they ask them to continue? Almost everyone seemed to have gotten incensed by the handler's approach of the situation. Those bastards didn't show up till after their deaths. How is any of this fair? Yonda stated loudly. Endrick watched from the side with an expression of remorse and regret. He stretched out his hand in Gustav's direction but lowered it in the next instant. I'm sorry, big brother. This is all my fault, he muttered underneath his breath. I should have sight. I could say I did the right thing by not intervening, but that would just be a way of consoling myself. It's all my fault. Endrick stood in place with a sorrowful expression. Don't blame yourself. There was nothing you could have done, Husarius voiced in his mind. You and I are both aware that's false. I could have prevented this. I saw it, but still let it happen. He would have lost way more if you intervened. So this was the best course of action. What if I could have prevented everything? Don't be delusional. If you had prevented this and kept preventing the future calamities it wrought, calamities would continue to stack in the future till it reaches a point where you longer have the power to prevent them. When that happens, your brother would lose everything. Don't mess with the fates, Husarius voiced with a cautioning tone. Endrick let out another sigh as he stared forward at Gustav, who was still in Angie arms. Hasn't he suffered enough? I just want to take all his sorrows away, Endrick mumbled as a feeling of powerlessness welled up from within. The Monolith Challenge was still ongoing at this time, and the entire Earth spectators area was in uproar. The Earthlings were not interested in any excuse the handlers had to give and demanded for the Zionsis to be immediately punished by disqualification. The entire arena was extremely noisy at this point, with loud arguments reverberated across it. I thought you would rip the whole place to bits when Gustav lost his life earlier. Grand Commander Cheyenne was a little surprised, even though Gustav came back from the dead. I knew he wasn't gone. Death is not powerful enough to take that kid away, Miss Amy responded with an unbothered look. How did he manage to come back to life? Grand Commander Cheyenne and many others had this question in mind, but since they were more concerned about making sure the Zionsis get punished, none of them dwelled on this confusion. Only Miss Amy was aware that Gustav had the reincarnation bloodline. All this time, that one belonged to young Joe. Gustav had informed Miss Amy that should he lose his life here in Aesop, she shouldn't interfere. Miss Amy had to promise him that she wouldn't, because Gustav knew how impulsive she could be in a situation that concerned him. She would still not allow any harm to befall Gustav, so long as she was watching, but since this was a competition, and she didn't want to ruin it for him, she decided to stay put. The handlers had brought back the bodies of Glade and Teamy. Grand Commander Cheyenne went to receive them with a few other officers, so proper procedures would be put in place. The entire Earth was currently in a state of mourning after losing two young participants with great potential, but Aesop was still ongoing, and they still wished to win. The uproar would not die down, but they were hoping and praying the participants would still have it in them to climb to the top of the monolith and take a spot amongst the 200, or all of this would have been for nothing. Many spectators couldn't believe how Earthlings could be so emotional about losing 2 participants when some of them had lost more than 2 since ISOP began. They didn't understand that Earthlings were very emotional beings. Author's note: please vote for Gustav in the character popularity contest. 7 hours are left before the next preliminary, and he needs to reach 16th place on the ranking. I know it's late, but there will be a mass release if Gustav reaches 16th place. Chapter 1297. They didn't understand that Earthlings were very emotional beings. A lot of time had passed on the monolith, and tons of groups had surpassed Earth participants on the monolith. Many of them used the left pathways to avoid bumping into Earth participants who occupied a part of the pathways for longer than expected. They had felt the dread earlier on that came from Gustav and decided it wouldn't be sensible to keep going right. At this point, it was starting to look like Earth would fail to reach the peak before all 200 spots were taken. "Let's go," Gustav voiced after some time, and sped forward instantly. None of them were able to get a word in before Gustav sped off. Try to keep up, his voice trailed off while the others moved at this point. It seemed like Gustav didn't want to move as a group anymore, since he no longer slowed his speed to match with the others. Sprint has been activated. Whoosh, only Angie was able to keep up with Gustav at this point, as they both headed for the peak. The rest of the group lagged behind, and some of them now realized just how fast Gustav was. There was no doubt that they had been surpassed by Mamie groups initially, but the moment Angie and Gustav moved, they covered a long distance in very short time. The group understood that Gustav had to get to the peak as soon as possible, since they had taken time below. It only took a short time for Gustav and Angie to arrive at the peak of the monolith. However, the moment they did, they met with a bunch of groups up ahead. The peak had an exalted area was the size of an entire stadium. Meanwhile, the whole peak of the monolith covered a radius of around 7,000 feet. It was as large as a couple of streets combined. The exalted area on the peak was where the blinding glow originated from, and it was also where the 200 spots for captains were situated. One would have to walk through the glow to get to one of the spots. However, to get to the exalted area on the peak, a loud roar reverberated across the peak. Gustav stared at the massive 60 feet tall creatures that were positioned around the exalted area. There were around 20 of them, and no doubt each powerful. These creatures had massive black space, helmets covering their heads so their facial structures weren't visible. However, their bodies were shaped like apes, and they also happened to have 14 dark tentacles strapped to their backs, despite their muscular frame. The captains would have to get past them to gain access to the exalted area. At the moment, participants and captains were engaging these creatures in a bid to get an opening. Unfortunately, things weren't easy in the slightest. The creatures were not only large, but their dark tentacles could extend as well, which made it easier for them to cover large distances. Captains would occasionally try to leap over them, so they could land within the exalted area, but such never ended well. Gustav watched a captain get completed wrapped by the dark tentacles and flung off the peak. While almost everyone was tense, Gustav was getting fired up as he squeezed his fist with a cold glare. "Just what I needed," he muttered while stepping forward. Swooah! An immense pressure radiated from his being, causing the participants around to instantly stare at him with look of confoundment. Gustav leapt forward in the next instant while Angie followed behind him. Gustav's arm transformed, becoming massive and reddish as he descended from the air. Thwai, Gustav's body twisted and flipped multiple times in midair, dodging the multiple tentacles that shot at him while he descended. "Go down." The surroundings trembled as his powerful fist landed on the heads of one of the creatures. Boom! A loud crash reverberated across the peak of the monolith, sending shockwaves across space that pushed everyone back. The jaws of nearly every participant here dropped as the creature that received the fist slumped heavily to the golden peak. I think you should take a look at Snavel. Thwaya Gustav didn't get the chance to stabilize himself as tentacles latched onto his figure from directions. His face showed a crazed look as he reached out to grab one of the tentacles and pulled the creature towards him. I must go offer my condolences. I cannot imagine how he must feel for being unable to protect his subordinate, Stark said to the figures beside him as he stared at the screens. Family head, I know you're going to say I should stay away from him, but I will not watch him suffer such without at least offering support in form of condolence. It isn't up for debate, Stark pointed out clearly, causing the figures beside him to keep quiet. I have spoken with Timmy before, and I find him to be a very warm person. Sigh what a loss. Even with all that, Gustav still managed to finish the challenge. Stark felt both sympathetic and respectful at the same time. Currently, the Earth spectators' areas was still in shambles. A bittersweet feeling arose within them. Timmy had been lost, but Gustav managed to claim a spot amongst the 200, getting Earth to the next stage. Timmy, 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 Timmy. At first, it was a little chant from one person, but soon other Earthlings began to join in. Timmy, 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 Timmy. Soon it became a fully vibrant chant from Earth's audience. It resonated deep from their hearts as they hailed this fallen participant. Even on Earth, as everyone witnessed Aesop on the big screens, the chants had overtaken the sound of vehicles. Almost every single person chanted Timmy's name. It was like a memorial, while the monolith challenge had come to an end with the end of his life. Sing, 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 sing. The groups that made it began to appear in the middle of the arena one after the other. In a bit, all 200 groups that passed had appeared in the arena. Cheers mixed with chatters rang out from the spectators' corners while Handler 1 moved to address them. Aeldris, Abestos, and Sharama, who didn't get to the peak with the others since they were sacrifices, were just hearing about Timmy. Aeldris was in disbelief for some time after hearing the full gist of things from E. He couldn't comprehend how such a thing could have taken place with everyone right there. I should not have been away from them. I should have let someone else been sacrificed. Aeldris blamed himself internally, but at the same time he felt he might have still failed to protect Timmy even if he was present, since Gustav also became a victim. It felt like a dream, but unfortunately this was the new reality of things. Timmy was gone, and they would have to continue without him, not for long. Gustav's gaze was laced with absolute coldness as he stated. The Zionses could feel his gaze of coldness penetrating their skins and instantly felt uncomfortable. They couldn't even stare back and had the urge to sink into the ground upon noticing Gustav's penetrative gaze. Captain Alumo was the most conflicted of the bunch, as he didn't know whether to approach Gustav and apologize for Ormon's actions or just stay put. The major problem was how the apology would be perceived. If he apologized, he risked putting the Zionsis in a state where he is supposedly admitting that the act was committed intentionally. This could also lead to a disqualification for them and be thought about how far his group had come since the start. No one thought they would make it this far, and now he had to proceed with decisions in the best interest of his planet. I am sorry, Captain Crimson. I really wish I could admit that it was done intentionally, but I cannot jeopardize the progress of my group after they have worked this hard to get here. I will put everything into making sure we are only given a strike and not disqualified. Captain Alumo let out a sigh as he came to a conclusion in his head. Earth participants continued staring daggers at them while waiting for Handler 1's briefing to be concluded. The next challenge will hold in 5 days from now, and the participants shall be spilt into 4 groups, Handler 1 voiced. Everyone paid more attention as Handler 1 got to this point. These 4 groups will each have 50 planets within under a particular color. Handler 1 went on to explain the 4 groups would be named after colors: red, blue, green, and yellow. When the time came, participants would be given colored vests that represent the groups they fall under. Unfortunately, we're unable to get Gustav to top 16, so no mass release. However, in appreciation to everyone who voted, he'll release 2 chapters tomorrow. Chapter 1298. When the time came, participants would be given colored vests that represent the groups they fall under. Handler 1 went on to add that only 1 out of the 4 groups would win the next challenge, and that 1 group would be the last participants left. Other participants under losing colors would be disqualified. He mentioned a few things more, without going into heavy detail, before the briefing finally came to an end. The participants were not completely aware of what the next challenge was about, but at the very least, Handler 1 had given them a bit of information. The ice op was truly coming to a finish, since the next challenge was going to be the second to the last before the challenge that would finalize everything. The champions of ice op would be crowned soon. The next couple of days were fraught with mourning and gloom as the group tried to recuperate after the loss of a loved one. As mentioned previously, the handlers went on to investigate Timmy's death so as to determine if it was done intentionally or accidentally. The MBO leaders let out their complaints and stated that even if it was done accidentally, it was an attack that killed not 2, but 3 of their representatives, Gustav included. They advocated that should the Zionsis be given strikes, they must be given 3, which should also lead to their disqualification. The Zionsis, on the other hand, were also not willing to throw in the towel and claimed it was just a single accidental attack, and their representative didn't think it would be capable of taking the lives of 3 participants in one go. It had turned into a court case of sorts, with either side not willing to back down. The investigation was taking longer than expected since the handlers claimed they couldn't find a reason for Orimon's sudden spike in strength at that moment. A lot of things weren't adding up, and Gustav was, of course, not going to let this slide. So he began personal investigations. One thing that had been concluded from the onset was the fact that Oremon was not powerful enough to conjure up such an attack on a regular basis. Sure, the Zionsis were strong since they managed to become top 200, but their strength wasn't close to that of the mixed blood participants. Earth was currently first place after all. Now, since he wasn't powerful enough, where did the energy come from? Gustav already drew a bunch of speculations, but arriving at a definite answer would require proof. Investigate this ring. I have a feeling it has something to do with his energy buff. Gustav reported to one of the handlers while displaying an holographic image of a trinket with a beast-shaped mouth on its surface and chain-like necklace dangling from the sides. It is our jobs to decide what we deserves to be investigated and what doesn't, Handler 128 stated with slight tone of arrogance. It felt like he was insulted that Gustav thought he had figured out something they hadn't. You seem to be doing a poor job, Gustav stated without a hint of intimidation. This discussion is over. Only come back when you have a statement about things you remember during the incident or proof of your claim. Handler 128 showed Gustav out of their building afterwards. Gustav didn't get mad or triggered in the slightest. Instead, he had an entire outlook on the whole issue. Being unable to take the suggestion of a party involved means either of 2 things: pride, or he's receiving bribes from the Zionsis. Gustav didn't want to hinge on the latter, but he couldn't entirely put it off. Not all the handlers could be incorrigible. Since proof is needed, I just need to bring back one, Gustav decided while walking away. There was a lot on Gustav's plate at the moment: Falco's transitioning, Timmy's death, and investigating the Indulus Prime. He had moved Indulus Prime aside in the meantime due to Timmy's death, but he would have to make room for that soon enough. He just wanted to make sure Timmy gets the justice he deserved. Internally, Gustav didn't wish to get the Zionsis disqualified. He just wanted to get down to the crux of the matter. The moment he was able to prove it wasn't an accidental murder, and the handlers still chose not to disqualify the Zionsis, then he would truly take matters into his own hand. Internally, he wished they wouldn't do the right thing so he could deal with the Zionsis in the worst way possible. On Falco's situation, Miss Amy had confirmed the answer of the person she contacted and claimed they would arrive on planet Ozius in a few days' time. Gustav headed back to their residential quarters and began making a new string of plans. SJ projected the holographic image of the trinket that was on one of Orimon's fingers when he conjured the spear attack during the confrontation. The color adds up. I just need to find out more information on the source of the jewelry and how it was acquired, Gustav thought while staring at the magenta-colored glow the trinket emitted. Ko. Two knocks on the door brought Gustav out of his reverie. Gustav was already aware of the identity of the person knocking, so he immediately answered. You can come in now. I think you should take a look at Snovel. Siamacron MTSSHHH. The door slid open and Stark walked in. Hey man, he voiced while moving to sit beside Gustav. Gustav returned the greeting and asked what brought Stark here. Just checking up on you, Stark stated. A much appreciated gesture, but I have my hands full at the moment, Gustav replied while analyzing the holographic image before him. Oh, wait. Stark eyes squinted as he stared at the holographic projection suspiciously. I recognize this, he stated. Gustav's attention was immediately drawn after hearing that. You do? Where have you seen it prior to this? Gustav questioned with an extremely curious tone. It was that night. Stark's face displayed a reminiscing look as he spoke. Gustav listened attentively with an intrigued expression. The night we went for Axel, I saw this in the hand of the person sitting across him in the restaurant before we got there, Stark pointed out. Gustav also recalled that night. It was one of the Zionsis, but not a participant, if I recall correctly, most likely one of their higher-ups with authority. Gustav had no issues with his memory, in fact. He remembered that night like it was playing out before him. The only issue was that trinket didn't exist in his memory. This was why he instantly recognized it. Gustav's face contorted as he began to piece things together. Axeler was a famous collector after all. There was no doubt he had a lot of powerful items in his collection, and this was one of them. That night, I should have truly gone after that person. Gustav's eyes shone with realization. What does this mean? Why are you concerned about that piece of jewelry? Stark questioned. Because that piece of jewelry is most likely responsible for the death of my friend. And to think that night, Gustav's face was immediately laced with an expression of regret. He recalled wanting to go after the person who he was unaware at the time had purchased this trinket. Stark had told him it was unnecessary since it was just a customer, and he felt that made sense too. If he had chosen to listen to his instincts and do so, maybe, just maybe Timmy, would still be alive now. How could that? Are you sure? Stark asked. There's only one way to properly confirm that this. Axeler needs to tell me the function of that jewelry and why the Zionsi higher-up purchased it, Gustav stated. But he is off-planet. Gustav realized this might be more difficult to clear up with proof than he expected. Silence reigned for a few seconds as Gustav thought of a way out of this. I might be able to contact Axeler, Stark voiced from the side. Are you sure? Gustav's voice was laced with a shimmer of hope. I have the means to do so, but it might take some time. It just depends on if he is in the position to accept dual interdimensional communication or not, Stark explained. Thank you, Stark. Let's try contacting him right away, Gustav voiced. So long as Gustav was able to get a statement from Axeler about selling the trinket and confirming its uses, he could use this against the Zionsis. SS without a doubt. These planets were automatically disqualified while the battle challenge went on. Gustav had only fought a single battle today since no one challenged him. After he won the battle, he took note of the fact that he had acquired enough points to challenge a certain opponent without having to worry about them declining. Tomorrow is the day, Gustav muttered underneath his breath, as the image of a participant with multiple limbs appeared in his mind. At the end of the day, Handler 1 addressed the entire arena again. Chapter 1299 ending in disappointment. Only a day was left before the next major challenge, and Gustav wanted to ruin the Zion's chances of partaking, but things weren't currently moving in their favor. Grand Commander Cheyenne was at the forefront of the issue and appeared before the board over 4 times in the course of the last 5 days. The handlers claimed that there still wasn't any proof that the attack was intentional, and Orimon had been repeatedly interrogated, and also claimed it wasn't intentional. The fact that he was unable to amass such power on a regular gave the Zionsis something to hold on to. Grand Commander Cheyenne provided footages of past challenges where Timmy and Glade fought against a couple of them and ended up leaving one of them severely injured. It was brought up to the panel that the severely injured Zionsi participant happened to be the brother of Orimon. It showed that Orimon had every reason to go after the two. Gustav also joined Grand Commander Cheyenne in providing more footages of where Orimon repeatedly tried to challenge Timmy and Glade. Everything added up, according to the panel, but the Zionsis admitted that even if this was to be so, Orimon was still incapable of killing 3 people with a single attack. The whole case seemed to be dragging on, as the panel still hadn't come to a conclusion. On this day, there was going to be another hearing of sorts for the case, and Gustav had decided to find an alternative, since Axeler was taking time to give a feedback. Within the same panel hall Gustav was called to during his first scuffle with the Zionsis, 2 different groups stood to the right and left respectively before the board. We have new evidence to provide on how the murderer Orimon knowingly slaughtered 2 of our own, an MBO officer voiced from the left. Chatter, chatter, chatter. The Zionsis, by the right, tried to voice out their displeasure at Orimon's labeling, but got shut down by one of the board members. Silence. We shall let the earth display their new evidence. The floor is yours. Gustav stepped forward with a translucent, smooth-surfaced, circular item which floated in mid-air beside him. SJ, project the footages, Gustav commanded. SJ, proceed to emit rays of light that formed a holographic projection of footages. Oh, a look of intrigue could be seen on the faces of the board members as they stared at the footages. That is Premier Sherman having a transaction with the collector known as Axeler. The moment Gustav uttered these words, loud gasps could be heard within the panel room. Everyone was aware of who Axeler was, and now they could see Premier Sherman, who was a Zionsi higher-up having a meal with the galaxy-wide criminal. Do take note of the ring he received from Axeler, Gustav voiced, while the footage displayed the full meeting between both of them. Panel leaders, you cannot believe the words of this earthling. That could be Anne. One of the Zionsis tried to speak, but was cut short by a panel leader. Wait your turn. Let the earthling speak. The Zionsis kept quiet after this, but the visible look of distraught could be spotted on their faces. The more Gustav spoke, the higher the tension in the air increased. The footage of Sherman receiving the trinket played out completely, and even displayed Axeler disappearing. Gustav mixed a bit of lie at the end, stating that Miss Amy was on to Axeler, but he managed to escape before he was caught. However, Sherman had already purchased the item he needed. The footage went on to display the moment during the Monolith Challenge where Orimon had the same trinket around his finger. The trinket emitted a magenta-colored glow just moments before the same colored blazing spear appeared. All of these are proofs that the Zionsis purchased an item that could temporarily boost power just so he would be able to kill my subordinates with a single attack. They did purchase from the most notorious collector wanted across galaxies after all, Gustav explained with a tone of certainty. Of course, feel free to confirm the authenticity of these footages, Gustav added. Panel leaders, do not let this earthling mislead you. That person could have been anyone, and we are unaware of what that ring is. Orimon should be able to explain better, one of the Zionsis voiced, while gesturing at Orimon. Orimon shakily stepped forward to speak. Pa. Panel leaders, I received that ring from Uncle Sherman without being aware if it meant anything. It was a gift. That is a lie. Why would anyone want to purchase an ordinary jewelry from one of the most known collectors in the world? Grand Commander Cheyenne butted in strongly. That indeed doesn't make any sense. What do you have to say for yourself, Oriman? One of the panel leaders questioned. Panel leaders, surely you are aware that this person doesn't look anything like Axelar. Axelar looks like this. One of the Zionces went on to display Axelar's true look with an holographic projection. This was an image of the same person Gustav and Stark had seen on that day where Miss Amy abducted Axelar and made him take on his true form. Beautiful like a female, body structured like a male, but happened to be void of gender. As we should all know, no wanted criminal would come to a planet like this with their true form, Gustav voiced from the side. Bring evidence forward that this person before Premier Sherman is Axelar, another one of the Zionces stated. There was a brief silence, and due to this the Zionces got more confidence and stated that the Earth was just trying to frame them over a normal piece of jewelry. Even if there is no proof that Axelar was the person who sold that item to Premier Sherman, it is without a doubt that the item is responsible for the murderous attack. The footage proves everything, Grand Commander Cheyenne pointed out. Panel leaders, my subordinate only chose to accept a gift from his uncle. When did that become a sin? There is no evidence that the item was bought from the collector known, as Axelar, neither is there any evidence that also would prove that our representative knowingly used that item to kill his fellow rivals. Captain Alomo spoke as well. Even if it is what the Captain of Earth says it still doesn't prove that Oriman activated it intentionally. The young participant WSS completely oblivious, another one of the Zionces stated. Indeed, as the Zionces have claimed, the evidence provided here is incomplete, one of the panel leaders stated. The evidence is right there in front of you. Are y'all fucking blind? Gustav voiced with a cold tone. Watch your language, Earthling. One of the panel leaders stated with a strong tone of caution. As things stand, the panel is still unable to decide whether the Zionces should be completely disqualified or given a strike. However, if they are able to bring forward evidence of the other person in the video being Axelar, the panel will disqualify the Zionces, another one of the panel leaders stated. Earth tried to say a few things to buttress their point, and the Zionces also weren't satisfied with the fact that the only thing needed to get them disqualified was proof of that person being Axelar. Both parties were unable to change the decision of the panel, who decided to give Earth more time to gather evidence before they came up with a conclusion. Both sides were currently tensed due to the present state of things. We have to make sure they never get their hands on any evidence to prove that it was Axelar, the Zionces decided, as they stepped out. Evidence? I will get that. Gustav was a bit disappointed as to how things turned out today, but he was sure about getting the evidence. Although he was unable to stop the Zionces from participating in tomorrow's challenge, he would definitely get them disqualified before the coming one after tomorrow. Stark would make sure to get everything prepared for him while he focused on the coming challenge. Even if I am unable to get them disqualified now, should we come into contact with one another, I will make them pay. I will make them wish they had gotten disqualified earlier. Gustav swore internally as he made his way back to the residential quarters. The spectators were excited for the next challenge due to the fact that it was the second to the last, but Gustav was more interested in it to deal with this bunch. At the moment, the issue of Earth's loss had spread, and how they wanted the Zionces disqualified. Some alien spectators sympathized with them, since they lost two potential youngsters in one go while others felt they were doing too much. The latter mentioned things like, Earth isn't the first to lose representatives, so why are they acting like it's a big deal? Follow current novels on topnovelfool.com. Chapter 1300. Truly other planets that lost one or two representatives didn't make a huge fuss out of it like Earth was doing, but Gustav didn't care about all the remarks flying around. If the others were unconcerned about losing lives of loved ones, that was their business. As for him, he would make sure the Zionces paid dearly. You've been avoiding me. The moment Gustav stepped into the residential quarters, he voiced out. Big brother, Endrick mumbled with a slightly guilty expression before turning away. And you're still doing it, Gustav voiced. I am not. I just have something to do, Endrik said, while stepping forward. Pa! Gustav grabbed Endrik by the arm before he could move away, stopping him in his tracks. What are you feeling guilty about? Gustav questioned. Endrik's heart missed a beat the moment he heard that. I am not. Endrik stuttered for a bit before Gustav chimed in. Don't lie to me. I only recently just accepted you as my little brother. Don't make me regret that action. Gustav's tone was so cold, it took effect on the atmosphere. Endrik's heart sank to his stomach. His face had turned extra white as he pictured worst-case scenarios. Big brother, I am just feeling the same as everyone. We are mourning Timmy's loss, are we not? And we all feel guilty about being unable to save him. Endrik spoke without turning his face around. Tell me something. Did you see it? Gustav questioned with a suspicious tone. See what? Endrik's lips quivered, since he knew exactly what Gustav was asking about, but still decided to play dumb. Don't mess around. You're a time candidate. To an extent you can perceive coming events before they happen. Did you see it? Did you know the attack was coming? Gustav reiterated with a strong tone of suspicion. It was too late when I did. I may be a time candidate, but I can't see everything, Endrik replied with a remorseful tone. Okay. Gustav let Endrik go and turned around to head to the passageway. Endrik heaved a sigh of relief as Gustav approached the passageway, but then he suddenly stopped. If I ever find out that you know more than you are letting on, you will come to regret it, Gustav stated with a strong tone. Whatever it is you're hiding, make sure you take it to the grave with you. Gustav's voice trailed off as he walked away. Endrik was visibly shaken and stood in place for many seconds without moving. He gulped down saliva in fear as his mind roamed with thoughts. How could I tell him I betrayed the trust of a loved one for him? How could I tell him I took over 3 million lives to make his better? How could I tell him that even after the lives I sacrificed, I still failed to protect 2 of his loved ones? How could I possibly tell him that I was aware of their deaths before it happened? How can I tell him I am a piece of shit? Endrik's lips quivered as he tightened his fist in pain and helplessness. He remained in place for minutes before he finally stepped forward. Will you come clean to him? Husarius asked internally. I don't know. I think he will hate me if I do. Endrik responded with a look of defeat. Ninth Fall arrived very quickly, and at this point the Golden Streets had less traffic as well as the air. The massive arena was extremely quiet and void of life, or so it seemed. At a part of the outskirts of the arena, a being covered completely with bandage-like black clothes could be seen in a squatting position. Dark mist emitted from this being with hollow pitch-black eyes as they carved an unknown symbol onto the arena back walls. // After carving out the symbol, a small white glow shone across the edges of the carving before it suddenly vanished. In the next moment, it looked like nothing had been carved in that area. The dark, clothed being stood upright and nodded, probably in satisfaction. The moment they turned around to leave, a face appeared their line of sight. Grab. It had come as a jump scare, as this face was only inches from theirs the moment they turned around, but the figure grabbed them before they could jump back instinctively. The dark being struggled continuously as the figure wrapped their hands around the being's neck. The dark being was unable to release itself, no matter how much they tried. This figure was just too strong and soon caused the dark being to pass out very quickly. Minutes later, the dark being clad in black bandage-like clothes could be seen approaching Indulus Prime residential quarters. He arrived before the entrance, and it opened up for him automatically. The moment he stepped in, it was like he had just arrived within a different world. I think you should take a look at Snavel. Cold, extreme coldness and humidity swept across the air. The ceiling had disappeared. There was no passageway, No walls, no doors, no furnitures, or anything else that would be present in a normal participant's residential quarters. Just total darkness. It looked like a world of endless darkness that extended forever. Anyone would get lost in this world, since there was no sense of navigation, but the dark figure continued to stroll through this void world. After what seemed like forever, the dark figure could spot other dark figures similar to himself in the distance. "You're late, Mar. Did you get it done?" Indulus Prime Captain questioned. "Yes, all done," Mar responded after arriving before the group of 19. "Good, good. Hold on, why can't I sense our connection?" Indulus Prime Captain questioned while moving closer to Mar. Mar stood in place without answering. "Oh, another distant disconnect," Indulus Prime Captain voiced with a tone of understanding. "We have to report our progress to Prime G right now," one of the other Indulus Prime members voiced. "He'll have to fix this connection problem later. Time to report to Prime Vessel G," Captain Iron stated before turning to the side. Everyone gathered around and formed a circle in the next moment. R2 Oixaru SKX Chi Vri Itmelu. Mist emitted from everyone's figure as Captain Iron began chanting with his eyes closed. The environment was already extremely dark, so it would be impossible to see dark mist here, or even the dark figures. However, these figures could see each other clearly along with the mist. After a couple of seconds, Furuam, a pair of deep dark eyes appeared in their midst. Everyone instantly bowed upon the appearance of these large dark eyes. Prime Vessel G, they voiced with respect, causing their unified voices to echo across this dark space. "How are the preparations going?" A voice boomed across the dark space, radiating with power and vibrance. "All preparations are almost finished. Before the last challenge comes to an end, it will be activated," Captain Iron stated. "And are you sure the Outworldly will be in the midst of it?" Prime Vessel G questioned. "Leave that to us." Prime Vessel G, Captain Iron spoke. Everyone else was quiet while Captain Iron made the reports and answered any question Prime Vessel G threw at him. "The offspring, tell me, have you seen him?" Prime Vessel G inquired. "Not for a long time. I heard something happened to him," Captain Iron answered. "Unbelievable. That means the Lord did it. He truly interfered." Prime Vessel G tone was laced with astonishment and adoration. Prime Vessel G, are you saying?" Captain Iron was just as shocked as he responded. "Yes, that offspring. He must really be fond of." "This also means I have a new task for you," Prime Vessel G stated with a tone of seriousness. "Anything you wish," Captain Iron replied. "Bring back." "Sniff, sniff, what is that foul smell I perceive?" Prime Vessel G suddenly paused, while his deep dark eyes darted around. "Foul smell?" Prime Vessel G, "I do not can." Captain Iron suddenly paused and turned to the side. "I smell it too faintly," Captain Iron spoke with a tone of confusion. "That would mean an unwanted presence is in our midst." "Iron, you fool. One of your clones is not a clone." Prime Vessel G voice boomed thunderously as his gaze settled on the Indulus Prime participant that arrived the latest. "Mar? You're not Mar. Who are you?" Captain Iron questioned with a strong tone while staring at the teammate. "Cheers. Chatter. Chatter. Cheers." The next morning had arrived, and everyone had gathered in the arena as usual. Loud cheers of excitement rang out from the spectators' area as the participants made their way to the middle of the arena. Thwy Hamler one appeared on the screens, standing on his usual podium, and began addressing the audience. "Today's challenge is called the Medallion." In the next instant, the screens displayed a list of all the planets and then proceeded to start categorizing them. The colors red, blue, yellow, and green were tabled out vividly. Chapter 13:01. The colors red, blue, yellow, and green were tabled out vividly. The computerized system filed the name of planets underneath the different colors, and in the next few seconds, everyone was aware of what color group they belonged to. We're amongst the yellows, some Oxlakix voiced. We're in the same group, Planet Orion. Participants moved towards them. Green, let's meet up with the others. Why are we in the same group with these weaklings? Damn it, I would have preferred if we were under the red. Sounds of chatters could be heard all around from both participants and spectators. While everyone was either ecstatic or tensed, Earth participants seemed to be distraught. Any luck? Asked Alevra, who approached from the other hand. No, we can't find him anywhere. Alevra responded with an extremely disturbed tone. Swoosh, Angie's figure blazed through the participants and arrived before and Alevra. She shook her head with a look of concern while and Alevra grew even more disturbed. He didn't come back last night. I know it's not the first time, but he has never been late to a challenge. Angie fidgeted while speaking. Yeah, this is unlike him. And it's even worse that we don't know his whereabouts, responded with a sigh. I have informed Miss Amy. She's searching as well. Eldris approached them while speaking. For someone as powerful as she is to be unable to find Gustav in an instant, something must be wrong, Matilda intoned. Guys, what are we going to do? The challenge is about to begin, Sheila voiced from the side. At the moment, Handler 1 was giving details on the medallion challenge while the Earth representatives was missing a person, Gustav. The medallion challenge is a very simple one, as Handler 1 spoke. A massive golden medallion descended from above. It was the size of a skyscraper with its golden-plated circular surface 5 times the size of a truck. It floated just 2 feet above the ground, emitting a distinct glow from the carvings all across its surface. That is the medallion. The challenge comes to an end after one or more persons from a colored group makes contact with the medallion for a required amount of time without separation. Chatter, chatter, chatter. Isn't that too simple? So if the required time is 5 minutes and a group manages to touch the medallion without disruption for that period, the challenge would end in 5 minutes. This won't take long at all. A lot of the spectators already bore it in mind that this challenge would be over very quickly without waiting for Handler 1 to finish speaking. Meanwhile, Miss Amy floated above the first disc, scanning the entire planet Ozius with her senses. Where are you, kid? She wondered internally while flying around the first disc at very quick pace. Her speed was extremely quick that even the watchtower was unable to capture her frame. She circled the entire first disc, which was 70 times larger than Earth, 10 times in a span of a couple seconds. Miss Amy was still unable to find him. She sped to the next disc, and then the disc after that. The next disc, it was the same result. She was unable to find Gustav, no matter how much she searched. Could he be off the planet? Miss Amy mumbled with a look of disbelief and confusion. She set her senses back on the 9th disc, hoping that Gustav would appear in the arena or something, but unfortunately, this wasn't happening. Come on, kid. You're going to miss this. Miss Amy was extremely worried as she noticed Handler 1 addressing the participants. Bear in mind, only one color group can try capturing the medallion at a time, because it only allows one group to make contact, and repels them when another group makes contact. The moment Handler 1 revealed this, the place turned even noisier. Repels them. Does that mean the group that makes contact after one gets repelled, or the other way around? This is a little confusing. This is going to be interesting. I think you should take a look at Snovel. Handler 1 went on to explain properly, with an instance displayed on the screens. An animation displayed a person in blue battle vest reaching the medallion first and making contact. Another person in red vest comes along and touches the medallion while the blue person is still in contact with the medallion. The moment the red touches the medallion, the blue immediately gets blasted backwards. The handler explained that two colors cannot make contact at the same time. The animation went on to display another person in green battle vest approaching. Upon contact, the one in red battle vest got bladed backwards. Everyone now understood that to capture the medallion, they needed to prevent every other color from getting close. This aspect was going to make things difficult, since there were 3 other colors to watch out for. The repellent force is powerful enough to crush the internal organs of any living being. Handler 1 dropped another bombshell, causing loud gasps and voices of terror to reverberate across the arena. "We're amongst the Reds," E.E. voiced with a tone of realization. He hadn't really been paying attention since they were trying to find Gustav. "Yeah, we are, but we're together with the Draconites. What if they try to pick a fight?" Matilda said with a worried look. "We're all looking to pass to the final stage, so I don't think they will do that. If they mess with us, it will also jeopardize their chances," Eldris pointed out. "How are we going to do this without Gustav?" Angie's question caused silence amongst them. "What do you mean by he is not here, Husarius?" Endrick questioned internally. "His energy signature vanished. He isn't on this planet," Husarius responded. "That makes no sense." Endrick knew there was no way Gustav would leave this planet, at least not willingly. He could be in another dimension or something, Husarius said with uncertainty. "Let's retrace his last steps." Endrick decided before storming off in the middle of Handler 1 briefing. "This is where the vests come in. The colored battle vests every participant shall be provided with has an inbuilt mechanism that absorbs the effects of the repellent force. A participant would still get repelled, but the vest would protect them from any serious harm," Handler 1 revealed calmly. The participants had relaxed expressions after hearing this, but Handler 1 wasn't done yet. "However, the vest only has a limited amount of energy. It can only prevent harm a number of times. When the energy within the colored vest has been depleted, a participant might lose their life if they were to get repelled again." Handler's 1's new revelation caused the faces of a lot of participants to pale. The challenge was truly both simple and tricky at the same time. Handler 1 mentioned that energy within the vest could be bought with points, so it seemed planetary groups with a lot of points might be able to purchase vest energy nonstop and remain immune to the harm of getting repelled. Planetary groups felt this was unfair, but then realized that this might be amongst the reasons why 50 planets were under each color. Planetary groups with high points could be found under every color. Every planet under red instantly became glad that they had Earth and Draconites with them, since these two had the highest number of points amongst all planets. They seemed to have better chances here. Meanwhile, the Earth participants were currently discombobulated. Only about 7 of them could be currently found in the arena, while the others had been continuously heading in and out while the briefing was ongoing. The medallion challenge will be beginning soon. All participants are required to wear their battle vests, Handler 1 voiced. 4 rectangular points, red, blue, yellow, and green, appeared in the arena while it expanded. The arena grounds were growing larger and larger, splitting the participants under different colors from one another. They were all required to move towards the various points that displayed their color. The participants headed there and touched the rectangular pillar that extended from the ground. Battle vests appeared on their bodies, displaying the colors they represented. "Where are the others?" "The challenge is about to begin," Yonda voiced with an elated expression while properly positioning the red vest on his body. "Looks like Gustav will be missing this challenge," Sharama said while gesturing at the others who were returning alone. "Looks like we'll have to do this under your command, Vice Captain." Abestos stated the moment the others gathered around to get their vests. Eldris had a troubled look of defeat as he let out a sigh and acquired his red vest as well. "All right, everyone, let's do our best," Eldris voiced with a focused expression. "Let the medallion challenge begin. The Bloodline system is now available on Amazon KDP, Kindle and paperback version. Reviews will be appreciated. You could also share with a friend of loved one. Thank you all for the continued support. Chapter 1302, Let the Medallion Challenge Beggy, gasped. The entire arena lit up in uproar, as an unexpected phenomenon suddenly occurred at Bee's moment. Thryria, what the hell is that? He voiced with a tone of terror. A dark rift had appeared in the sky above the arena, making it seem as though the sky was ripped apart. It brought with it an energy of darkness that vigorously caused the atmosphere to shake. Handler 1 had also paused in confusion as he looked upwards with knitted eyes. Participants and spectators were just as terrified as well as confused. "There's someone there," a participant yelled while pointing at the sky. "Huh?" Everyone looked closely and truly noticed the hands of a person spreading the rift apart from within to make it wider. It seemed as though this person was responsible for the rift and happened to still be tearing the sky open. "Is that—" Angie's eyes widened as a face stuck through the opening of the rift. "Gustav," and Eldris voiced at the same time as the person proceeded to jump through the rift's opening. The rift in the sky vanished immediately after. FYI, the whooshing wind reverberated across the place as the figure dropped from a height of more than 20,000 feet. Bang! He landed precisely in the midst of the arena, causing a storm of dirt to be dispersed across the air. Fwoosh, fwoosh, fwoosh. 3 handlers had already arrived before him the moment he landed with wariness. Chatter, chatter, chatter. Dash, is that Earth's captain? Dash, where's he all this time? Gustav Crimson. One of them voiced with a tone of wariness as the figure, who seemed to have dark corroded markings all over his body, stood in place with his knees slightly crouched and his face lowered. Phew, his body emitted a cloud of mist as he slowly raised his face, displaying a menacing-looking glint at the corner of his eyes. "Hope I am not too late?" Gustav questioned as the dark marks of corrosion all over his body slowly began to fade. Are you okay?" One of the handlers questioned. Gustav turned to shoot a glance in the direction of a group of dark beings in blue battle vests. "I am fine." The brief stare was so intense that even the participants surrounding the group it was directed at felt chills. "So it was him," Captain Iron voiced with a tone of realization. "This is bad, Captain," one of the Indulus Prime members said in response. "It is, but he cannot do anything to stop what is coming," Captain Iron stated while staring at Gustav, who was getting questioned. The handlers scanned Gustav and even had their medical team check up on him. While the challenge was briefly halted, his teammates had surrounded him as well, questioning him about what happened, but Gustav didn't answer anyone and asked only one question. "Where is Miss Amy?" Fwish bang. Miss Amy landed in the arena the next moment and walked towards Gustav. "Ma'am, you're not supposed to be—" "Shut up." Miss Amy cut one of the handlers off before they could complete their sentence. "Are you all right, kid?" Miss Amy questioned the moment she arrived before him. "Captain Crimson has less than 1 minute to decide if he will be partaking in this challenge or not." Handler 1 voice reverberated across the arena. "There's no time," Gustav said while reaching out to grab Miss Amy's face. "Memory transfer has been activated." Before Miss Amy could throw further questions, a plethora of Gustav's memories of the last few hours drifted into her mind. Her expression was one of disbelief and surprise as this lasted for around 20 seconds. "Time up. Earth, are you prepared to partake in this challenge, or will you be forfeiting?" Handler 1 voice rang out once more. "We're ready," Gustav answered while Miss Amy nodded and flew out of the arena. "You need to get your vest first," Eldris said while pointing at the red structured pillar on the southeast corner of the arena. "I think you should take a look at Snovel." Swoosh, Gustav's figure vanished and reappeared before the pillar. Upon making contact, a red battle vest appeared on his body. "We're fully ready now." Gustav's voice reverberated heavily across the arena like a battle cry. Does he even know what the challenge is about? Matilda nearly face-bombed after Gustav's yell. "We'll have to brief him." Eldris responded while the handler finally gave the go-ahead for the challenge to begin. Let the medallion challenge begin. Medallion challenge? Looks like I missed a whole lot, Gustav voiced, as he recalled what happened last night. That would mean an unwanted presence is in our midst. Aren't you fool? One of your clones is not a clone. Prime Vessel G voice boomed, thunderously as his gaze settled on the Indulus Prime participant that arrived the latest. Mar? You're not Mar. Who are you? Captain Iron questioned with a strong tone while staring at the teammate. Bloodlust suddenly covered the entire dark space as the figure they glared at suddenly turned around. Fuhush, his figure darted across the dark space with speed as he made a run for it. After him! Kill him! Kill him! Prime Vessel G commanded. The endless darkness began to twist and turn as they chased after the infiltrator. The infiltrator was none other than Gustav, who had taken the form of one of the Indulus Prime participants. Gustav had been staking the Indulus Prime members for almost 2 weeks without their knowledge. During that time, he had taken note of their activities and properly plotted how he was going to infiltrate their residential quarters. Now he had successfully done. So, however, there was something he never saw coming. He had no idea that the Indulus Prime participants were all clones of their captain, Iron. Swoosh! Gustav was very quick, no doubt, but the expanse of darkness was starting to reject him. It was like it had been rewired to gnaw away at his existence so long as he remained within. The Indulus Prime participants were having a hard time catching up despite this being their domain, but with the darkness thrashing at Gustav, he was bound to eventually slow down. The vicinity was becoming corrosive for him, and dark marks began appearing all over his body. I can't seem to get to the entrance. Did the darkness expand? Gustav wondered as he kept dashing forward unhindered. Gustav's perception had grown so huge that he was capable of covering the size of the entire Earth with it at his current strength. This was why he was able to navigate this expanse of darkness and find the Indulus Prime members in the first place. However, now that it seemed the darkness was expanding, Gustav was finding it difficult to leave this place. Tuhush, an Indulus Prime member, suddenly materialized from the darkness before him, branding a pair of dark blades. Slash! Gustav bent backwards, dodging the swing of the dark blades, which missed his face by only a few inches. His figure swerved to the side and grabbed the Indulus Prime participant from the back of his head. The moment Gustav made contact with his head, a thought appeared in his mind. Mental manipulation has been activated, siphoning memories. Gustav's eyes gleamed with an expression of confoundment as string of memories streamed into his mind. The figure in his grasp shook repeatedly, like someone suffering from epilepsy. In a few moments, this figure dematerialized, turning completely into dark mist. Gustav only managed to get bits from his memory, since it was also one of the clones. Still, he had gotten useful information that helped him in piecing things together. Gustav had no time to dwell on everything he had uncovered. He had to keep running. Hours went by, and Gustav still hadn't found the exit. It must be daytime already. At this rate, he'll miss the next challenge, Gustav said internally while panting profusely. At this rate, you might even die here. The dark domain is corroding your body faster than your regeneration can keep up. The system voiced in his head. Yeah, huff huff. I noticed, Gustav responded while letting out heavy breaths. You need to get out of this dimension as soon as possible. I know. Finding the exit is becoming impossible. Gustav paused and turned around to scan the vicinity. There was nothing but darkness for thousands of miles. He couldn't use his dimensional bracelet to get out because for some reason the domain hindered its functionality. If I can't find an exit, then I will create one. Gustav's voice was calm, but it radiated powerfully across the vicinity. His eyes emitted a crimson glow in the midst of the blistering darkness as he returned to his original form. Sing, the Jiko Hakai katana, appeared in his grasp, and he suavely raised it while wrapping his second hand around the bottom part of the hilt. His arms transformed, becoming extremely muscular and lengthy as dark scales appeared all over them. Chapter 1303, his arms transformed, becoming extremely muscular and lengthy as dark scales appeared all over them. If you do this, you could appear anywhere on planet Ozius. The system seemed to understand what Gustav had in mind. It doesn't matter, so long as I get out. A burst of immense energy radiated from his figure as Gustav gathered all the strength he could muster at this moment. ×2 power boost has been activated. Atomic manipulation has been activated. Slash has been activated. Gustav activated a bunch of skills at the same time, boosting his strength by several levels. If anyone was to witness the chaotic energy swirling across the place, they would be shook to the core. Gustav swung the Jiko Hakai katana forward in the next moment, causing a powerful bolt of energy to slash across the dark dimension. Through the space-time continuum within the dark dimension rippled vigorously as the powerful slash tore a hole through space. A rift had appeared up ahead. The small space between the rift displayed a golden-plated planet with a massive arena in the distance. Gustav quickly sped forward while keeping the katana away and tried stabbing his hands through the rift. It was only small at first, making it difficult for him to jump through, but when Gustav arrived before it, he ripped it open wide with his bare hands. FYI, he jumped through in the next instant, to think not only are the Indulus Prime members clones of their captain, but they also are not the real Indulus Prime species. Gustav FSLT that everything he had discovered in the span of a night had pieced the puzzle ongoing in his mind for over a month. Now that Gustav had uncovered their intentions and what they were hiding, why didn't he say anything, or try to get them disqualified the moment he got out of the dark dimension? Simple. Gustav had no time to gather evidence that could be visibly viewed by everyone. If he tried to do that, he would only be forfeiting the current challenge, and Indulus Prime would still be able to partake regardless, since the challenge wouldn't be put on hold just cause of his words. This was the reason he had passed the information to Miss Amy immediately, which included a bunch of memories from the moment he began investigating them. This way he could participate in the medallion challenge, while Miss Amy did the needful to get rid of Indulus Prime while it was ongoing. That's our objective, E voiced. Oh, I see, Gustav voiced in response after E explained everything that the challenge entailed to him. This gave me an idea, Gustav voiced. Oh, you sweet, one that would help us when right? E asked. A sinister grin appeared on Gustav's face in the next moment as he stared in a particular direction. One that would help us when right? E's smile stiffened as he spotted where Gustav was staring at. Gustav proceeded to charge forward faster than a lot of the other planet's participants under the red group. Every of the colors were all heading towards the massive medallion from 4 different directions. Everyone, let's clear the perimeter around the medallion first before trying to capture it, Captain Austral voiced loudly from the front. You're not the boss of me, one of Planet Zillion participants yelled from the side. We're going to need to work together if we want to win this, a participant from Planet Ruz voiced with an amicable tone. Captain Crimson, you agree with me, right? Captain Austral questioned. Yeah, it would be best we assign roles to each other. Let some of us handle defense to prevent any other colors from getting close once we start capturing the medallion. Let some be stand-ins just in case any color manages to break through and touch the medallion. They would quickly take the position of those that have gotten repelled. Let some take the role of contact. And it would be better if they had a lot of est energy to keep going after getting repelled. Some also need to take care of defense on an aerial level, Gustav listed out. Formations they could take once they managed to clear the perimeter. He didn't care that Planet Draconet had previous scuffle with Earth. Right now they were on the same team, and they needed to come up with ways to succeed together. The planets under red quickly categorized themselves in formations. deciding the land/aerial defenders, aggressors, touchers, and stand-ins based on Gustav's suggestions. However, this formation would not be met yet as the four colors clashed the moment they arrived before the medallion. Bang, bang, boom, boom. All sorts of attacks were thrown out as the colors engaged each other. The arena quickly turned to a battlefield as explosions and heavy collisions rang out repeatedly. Destruction rippled across the place as craters were left on the grounds of the arena. Powerful planets existed in other colors as well. So Red was finding it difficult to follow the plans they agreed to. Blue is capturing the medallion. A loud, automated voice reverberated across the entire arena the moment a participant in blue vest made contact with the medallion. Boom. A small explosion rang out as another colored participant touched the medallion in the next moment, causing the blue-vested participant to get sent flying thousands of feet away. Green is capturing the medallion. Boom. I think you should take a look at Snovel. Siamacronem. Red is capturing the medallion. Boom. Yellow is capturing the medallion. Explosions rang out multiple times along with different announcements as participants repeatedly got repelled after trying to capture the medallion. The medallion was very massive, so it would be difficult to prevent anyone else from touching it. At the moment, so many participants engaged each other around the medallion, which made things even more difficult. Sweey's bang. One of the Klaxosapes swung his massive club forward, clearing a bunch of participants around the golden, glowing surface of the medallion. He immediately went on to touch the medallion. Yellow is capturing the medallion, and Oxus participant in green moved to touch the medallion as well. But fly bang! A Klaxosape sent a kick at his face, causing him to spiral across the air heavily. Other Klaxosapes had also come from the side and attacked anyone that tried to get close to the medallion while it was being captured. Unfortunately, this didn't last long, as a figure descended from the air. Fwai, one of the Klaxosapes, leapt up to meet the descending female figure in red vest, but he didn't manage to cross more than a 20 feet height before. Thry! A bright purplish beam shot out from the forehead of this figure, slamming into the Klaxosape and sending him crashing into the ground below. Elevra made contact with a part of the medallion from above, and all the Klaxosapes touching it instantly got repelled. Red is capturing the medallion. She heaved a sigh of relief, but it didn't last more than a second as another participant made contact with the medallion from below. Bang! A heavy force slammed into Elevra, sending her flying in the next instant. Green is capturing the medallion. We need to regroup and stick to that formation now. Captain Austral yelled with a slightly frustrated look as she sent an opponent in blue vest flying with a fist. There are still many surrounding the medallion. Fildhor yelled with his body turning completely metallic black. Where is Gustav? Yelled as he couldn't spot Gustav around. A few moments later, a figure descended from above powerfully on the east side of the medallion, where no red vest was situated. Bang! A burst of red energy blasted forth from his figure, sweeping across the vicinity heavily. Kyrer, loud and painful shrieks rang out as hundreds of participants got sent flying from this red shockwave. Gustav turned around at this point while his skin turned green and bloated. Ria now! He yelled while stomping onto the ground. Bang! At the same instant, Ria pushed his hand towards the ground as well. Kruov, Ruchachko, icicle-like walls instantly rose around them, and the medallion, covered in liquid lava like flames, and milky glow coating their tips. The walls rose to a height of more than 9,000 feet in a couple of seconds, causing the battlefield to quake greatly. It surrounded the medallion and the red-vested participants, boxing them in, but they weren't the only ones within this barricade. Other participants in different colored vests were also within. Endrick! Gustav yelled. Endrick nodded and snapped his finger. Pa! An invisible barrier instantly appeared above the barricade, protecting the upper open space like a rooftop. Bang! Participants who had flight abilities and wanted to dive downwards hit the invisible barrier and were left stupefied. "EE, it's your turn now," Gustav said to EE, who immediately understood. EE pushed his fingers forward and began to conjure vortexes across the space within the barricade. The participants in other colored vests found themselves sucked into the vortexes before they could even put up a fight. Chapter 13. For the participants in other colored vests found themselves sucked into the vortexes before they could even put up a fight. Red is capturing the medallion. With cheers, loud cheers rang out from the spectators' area that consisted of planets under the red color. Dash, Captain Crimson is amazing. Dash, he just single-handed turned the tide. Dash, at this rate we might win. Dash, let's cheer them on. The Earth spectators area, as well as others whose planet had been disqualified and had taken a liking to Gustav, could be heard talking about him in adoration. They began slowly chanting his name as they watched the challenge with looks of interest. Bang, 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 boom. The sound of explosions rang out heavily as the colors trapped on the outside of the barricade began sending forth powerful attacks. Endrick snapped his fingers a couple more times, creating more stacks of telekinetic barriers above and around the walls. He focused his energy mostly on the ones above to prevent entry. "This isn't going to hold forever," Gustav announced as his body returned to normal while he headed towards the others. "How long does it take to capture the medallion?" Gustav inquired. One person would need 1 hour without disruption, but if more participants of the same color make contact at the same time, the process would be sped up, Eldris explained. With every added participant of the same color touching the medallion, the capture time would be cut by 5 minutes. He went on to mention that the sped-up effect only works for 2 to 10 people touching at a time. Any more than 10 didn't increase the effect. Gustav nodded in understanding as he stared at the medallion. Since they were up to 1,000 participants under the red, they undoubtedly had 10 people to spare. "So, we just have to hold this for 15 minutes to win, right?" Gustav voiced, despite knowing the answer. "Yes," Eldris responded. Boom. The space within the barricade quaked heavily as a powerful attack hit the west side of the walls. Gustav was usually confident in the durability of the Iro silk, especially now that it was combined with Rias lava fortification and atomic manipulation. However, there were 3 different colors trying to get in at the moment. 3,000 powerful participants from different planets were all attacking at the same time. It was bound to come down if he didn't do something about it. Send us out there," Gustav instructed. "What? Wouldn't it be better for us to stay in here and fortify the barricade from the inside out?" Planet Ruz Captain voiced with a tone of confusion. "Everything will come crumbling down before we capture the medallion if we don't create a layer of defense out there. It would be better for some of us to go out there and ease the tension the barricade is currently receiving," Gustav explained. "I'd rather we stay in here," Captain Austral stated. "If the walls come crumbling down, well, make sure no one touches the medallion," Planet Zillion Captain stated, as well, and other planets' captain under the red color agreed. What they didn't understand was, the moment the walls came crumbling down, there was no way the capturing wouldn't be disrupted. No doubt powerful people were within the barricade, but one thing that remained obvious was the massive size of the medallion. This made it easier to make contact, but it seemed everyone else was overconfident about preventing touch if the walls came crumbling down. "All right then, send only me out there," Gustav decided. "What? Just you? There are thousands of them out there," said with a troubled tone. "Why don't I come with you?" Eldris voiced from the side. "Yes, let's come with you," added. Angie also closed in from the side. "Nah, you guys stay here. It needs more sensible folks," Gustav stated. "Send only me out there," Gustav added. "Come on, Ma. I also have unfinished business. Chop, chop," Gustav insisted. Everyone stared at each other briefly after hearing that, almost like they knew what Gustav was hinting at. They'll be better off taking care of things alone anyways. You guys just make sure no one disrupts the process inside here. Just as Gustav finished voicing out, a flash of bluish light appeared within the barricade. Two figures in yellow vests sped towards the medallion upon successfully teleporting inside the barricade. Bang! A lever descended upon the first one from above, completely leaving them incapacitated, while Captain Austral grabbed the second one by the throat and flung him towards the barricade walls. Threa quickly conjured a vortex in fear of what would happen to that participant should they make contact with the spiky lava-like walls. The participant's body phased through the vortex, and they vanished. Alevera grabbed the leg of the other participant and flung them in the direction of the vortex that was still open. He vanished as well, and Edie shut the vortex. I think you should take a look at Snavel. See Omicron, things like that will probably happen a couple more times, and they may even directly teleport in a manner that lets them make contact with the medallion the moment they appear here, Gustav referenced. You guys need to stay here and stop that from happening. It'll make it more difficult for them on the outside, Gustav added. All right, then, he voiced while clasping his palms together. Swire, a vortex appeared before Gustav, and he proceeded to walk in. Dash, what is Captain Crimson doing? Dash, is he going out of the barricade? Dash, what in the world is he thinking? The spectators were astonished as they noticed Gustav's actions. The violet-colored world only lasted for a second before Gustav arrived on the other end, which of course was outside the barricade. The moment Gustav appeared on the outside, he came into contact with a flurry of attacks headed in the direction of the barricade. Blazing skyscraper-sized flames, lightning streaks, multiple colored powerful beams, and many more attacks raging at the barricade. Mini black hole has been activated. FYI, Gustav leapt into the air and spread his arms like he was going in for a hug. The moment he performed this action, multiple baby fist-sized black swirls appeared all across the air in a lined-up format. The mini black holes spread across the place and stopped the flurry of attacks heaped into the barricade from the west side. Frurum, the attacks got swallowed up in a few moments, causing both participants and spectators' faces to lit up with expressions of astonishment. For the next 14 minutes, I will be your opponent. Gustav's voice rang out powerfully and vibrantly across the entire battle arena. At first, everyone thought he must have run mad, considering there were over 3,000 participants on the outside of the barricade. Planets like Osius, Diov, Indulus Prime, Claxus Apes, Osiris, Orion, and so many others were at the top of the rankings. They were very powerful. Yet Gustav had decided to face all of them alone. The moment Gustav whipped out the Jiko Hakai katana from his storage device, they understood that he wasn't messing around. You may be powerful, but this was a bad idea. Gustav, Captain Vilax voiced from up ahead. Maybe you're right. Gustav smiled before swinging the katana forward. A massive reddish arc with electric sparks swimming across it bloated the entire sky in the next instant, descending powerfully upon the battlefield. Take cover! One yelled as many participants chose to escape the attack, while some threw out attacks to counter. It looked like the sky was getting torn apart as the arc descended and wreaked havoc upon the battlefield. Lots of participants got blasted across the place as shockwaves spread heavily. Kyre! Screams rang out as many got hit by a dose of blistering hotness and electricity at the same time. The ground split open, and the arena became fraught with even more destruction. Bang, 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 bang. The sound of multiple collisions rang out as Gustav got engaged in midair by multiple participants who managed to escape the large-scale attack. FYI, his figure slipped downwards as pairs of arms reached to grab him from behind. He landed on the charred ground where another participant was already swinging a massive white, circular glowing blade at him. Dash has been activated. Rho Alpha and Alpha S Nu Omicron V Epsilon L Omicron M swoosh. Gustav swerved sideways, dodging the swing before sending a fist towards the back of the participant. Bang! Gustav proceeded to keep the Jiko Hakai katana away after his fist connected and leapt upwards once more. His arms turned into after images as he swung them forward in every direction. Bang! 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 It was like his fist slammed into all 6 participants surrounding him in midair at the same time as they all got sent flying in different directions with their backs caving in. Swee-eyed Gustav moved to the left, dodging an insect-like arm that swept past his face from behind in the next instant. Sorry, Gustav voiced before grabbing the arm and spinning. Whoosh, he flung the Ozius participant towards the ground in the next instant, causing their body to create a mini crater from the impact. Bang! We will be arriving at the first chapter scene after this. Thanks to everyone who made it this far. Chapter 1305, they know 1305, they know as Captain Strum, felt like he was hit by a moving orbital body as 2 of his arms uprooted from his body after receiving the fist from Gustav. Blood jetted out like a fountain as he slammed into the far end of the barrier, breaking straight through all the layers and continuously shooting out into space. FYI, Gustav figure vanished, and he reappeared in space hundreds of feet before Captain Strum's body, which was still shooting forward. He gathered energy in his right arm as he arched it backwards while clenching his fist tightly. His fist was coated in a golden and pinkish glow as he drove it forward at Captain Strum's approaching body. Boom! Space parted as Gustav's fist sent ripples across the endless expanse of darkness the moment it collided with Captain Strum. Bang! 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 THR. Stars in the distance got snuffed out from the destructive wave of energy that spread forth from Gustav's fist as Captain Strum shot downwards like a dying star. Through his body shot across the solar system as it descended towards the 9th disk. All of his limbs uprooted from his body as he fell unconscious even before he hit the battle stage. Boom! The battle stage got blasted to smithereens the moment Captain Strum came into contact with it, sending another wave of destructive ripples across the vicinity. Fwy! Gustav reappeared in the stage at this moment, as time came to a standstill again. He deactivated cosmic superiority at this point to make sure it wouldn't be active when time went back to normal. The glow emitted from Encore slowly whit-led as its figure began to disintegrate. Time stopped reversing, and everything that seemed to be in an illusionary state started solidifying. Strum had reversed time to the point where he just activated the full power of his Encore and was tossing Gustav around like a dirt bag. As time went back to normal functionality, the scene that the spectators would be witnessing was Gustav getting beat up. However, the moment time resumed, the entire stage suddenly appeared destroyed, and the scene the spectators were initially witnessing glitched like a video game playback. The spectators were completely astonished as they stared at the disgraded stage. One unconscious figure was completely laid on the ground with missing limbs, while another was standing before the unconscious one with an unbothered expression. Dash, what the hell just happened? Dash, Captain Crimson was taking a beating, and all of a sudden, Captain Strum is defeated? Dash, he looks bloodied and battered too. Dash, his Encore is gone too? This doesn't make any sense. Dash, how did this happen? The spectators were in an utter state of confusion, not recalling the events that played out after this point of the battle. Only a few spectators, like the council lords and Miss, stared at the stage with looks of understanding, but they still remained astonished. The kid has truly grown more powerful than I realized. Miss Amy muttered. HM? Young Miss, I sense time manipulation on a higher scale. What did we miss? Grand Commander questioned from the side. You didn't see it? Miss Amy asked with a slightly surprised tone. Grand Commander Cheyenne was an alpha, so she had expected that even if he couldn't be completely immune to time-related abilities, he would at least be able to perceive the events ongoing during time manipulation and have memories of the original timeline. I can only faintly sense that time has been altered on a large scale, but I have no recollection of how things exactly went, Grand Commander Cheyenne responded. Maybe this is a good thing. They will remain unaware that Gustav is a cosmic superior being. Miss Amy was still surprised that someone as young as Strum was able to pull this off with an alpha lacking memories of the original timeline, but she decided to use this to Gustav's advantage. She proceeded to narrate to Grand Commander Cheyenne the events that played out while skipping the mention of Gustav's use of cosmic superiority. She didn't give him any explanation as to how Gustav was immune to time manipulation, which made the Grand Commander even more confused, but Miss Amy would rather leave him in confusion than let the Earth be aware of Gustav's cosmic superiority until the kid was ready to reveal it himself. Strum lost? But how? The Earth's captain seems to have broken out of his time manipulation. But how is this even possible? The Draconid spectators area was in shambles as well. Bronze medially clenched her fist so tightly a popping sound rang out. Even after everything he still lost, she voiced with a chilly tone. That kid, the Earth's captain, he is a cosmic superior being. Anyone would have lost. The other's prestigious-looking fellow beside Bronze medially voiced out. Why did you stop me from interfering? No one would have noticed if I did. She turned to stare at the Draken beside her with a look of anguish. It was a battle between the two youngsters. Oldies like us are not meant to interfere. It would be a disgrace to our great planet if we were to interfere in such matters, the Draken voiced with a dismissive tone. Also, we are not the only ones who are aware of what went down, another male Draken voiced from the side while staring in the direction of Earth spectators area. Bronze medially gnashed her teeth while peering forward with a look of hatred. How dare that Earthling do this to my son? Gustav Crimson, planet Earth, wins, squinting eyes face. 1,200 points attained amidst the confused gazes of the millions of spectators. Gustav exited the stage and walked towards the Earth's participants area. Don't get me wrong, am glad Captain Crimson won, but what the fuck just happened? Beats me. I don't understand a thing. Even the Earth spectators area was full of confused people. Gustav's fellow team members were not left out of this confusion. Wow, what did you do, Gus? E.E. questioned the moment Gustav arrived before them. Long story, you all just can't remember because of Strum time-related abilities. Gustav heaved a sigh of fatigue as he took a seat. He had expended a lot of energy to win that battle and almost depleted his Yarki in the process. Yarki would have been long depleted if it wasn't mixed with the other ability Gustav unlocked after becoming a parallel being. Good job, big brother, Endrick voiced from the side. You saw it? Gustav questioned, but instantly arrived at the answer before Endrick responded. Time candidate perks? Gustav voiced. Endrick's mouth hung loosely for a bit before he answered. Yes. Oh? Endrick knows what happened. Endrick, tell us we're confused. Spit it out, man. The group quickly clustered around Endrick, who eventually decided to give them a brief analysis of what happened while leaving a lot of parts out. The versus battle challenge continued while the spectators still couldn't get Gustav and Strum's battle out of their heads and kept trying to find answers as to what happened. Big brother, I noticed something. Endrick approached Gustav. What is it? Gustav questioned. They witnessed it too, Endrick answered. By they, do you mean? Gustav glanced at Endrick with an expression of concern. Endrick nodded in response despite the fact that Gustav didn't complete his question. They're not supposed to be able to. This might be a problem. Gustav's caressed his chin with a contemplative expression as he muttered. Did you uncover anything about them last night? Gustav asked. Not yet. Am still looking. Endrick stuttered a little before responding. You figured something out, didn't you? Gustav's tone instantly turned suspicious. I really am still looking into it. I have pieced what I saw together yet. And no, you can't help me do that. I have to confirm if I'm looking in the right direction first. So I don't mince information. Endrick answered with a sincere tone. All right. Do let me know when you figured it out, Gustav stated while turning to stare in the direction of Indulus Prime participants. Indulus Prime participants stood together in place with their pitch-black eyes on display. As usual, their expression remained unknown due to the wraps of bandage-like clothing covering the entirety of their figures. 100% confirmed, one of them voiced out. It was just as I suspected, Captain Iron voiced with a tone of anticipation. We have finally uncovered the outworldly, while they exchanged a few words over there. Endrick stood in place with a disturbed expression on his face as his forehead glowed with green light. You told me everything was okay. How could this be? Endrick yelled, internally. No, I told you that going on that mission would increase the chances of averting great calamity in his future, which was correct. Husarius answered. Then what the hell did I see last night? Endrick asked. A better future compared to how things would have gone if you didn't act at all. Husarius replied. You are crazy. You are crazy if you think I am going to let that happen. Follow current novels on Top Novelful.com. Chapter 1306S before this arc could completely decimate the battlefield again. Captain Vilax appeared before the rest of it. Bang! He placed both arms before the massive red arc, and dark arrows began to appear all across it. Vilax is going to be a problem, Gustav muttered the moment he noticed the arc had been stopped. Vilax slowly joined his hands together, and upon performing that action, the massive red arc of destruction shrunk. I do not need to inform you that your days are numbered. Captain Iron appeared behind Gustav in mid-air like a puff of black cloud. Swee-eye! Captain Iron reached out to grab Gustav and held him in place. No, Gustav voiced while Vilax pushed his hands forward. Fwye-eye! The reddish arc went sent back in Gustav's direction, increasing immensely as it shot towards him. But yours are! Gustav grabbed Captain Iron's arms while increasing in size and proceeded to fling him in the direction of the oncoming massive reddish arc. Bam! Gustav landed on the ground and dashed towards the left while the arc rammed into Captain Iron's figure, sending him flying across the battlefield. Bang! The reddish arc of destruction vigorously slammed into the barrier Gustav and Rhea constructed around the medallion, causing it to quake. Gustav, on the other hand, charged towards the participants the moment he landed while conjuring massive red sickles. The captain of the Gundabalts was holding onto some greenish ribbon-like weapon, which she swung towards Gustav the moment he arrived before her. Gustav grabbed one of the massive red sickles in midair and hacked down at her figure. Swish, the ribbon collided with the first red sickle and turned greenish before sending off a powerful explosion. Gustav had vanished and reappeared behind one of her subordinate. Slash! He slashed at the back of this Gundabalt with another sickle, spilling blood on the battlefield. Gustav had gotten surrounded in just a moment again, as many of the captains tried dealing with him. The red sickles floating in midair swum around him, slashing at their figures very quickly. It looked like a blur of reddish blades whirring around Gustav, figure like chopper blades, AG this moment, only faster and more powerful. Bam, 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 bam. Lightning Blitz has been activated. His figure turned into a lightning streak before he was caught in an inescapable entrapment, and he reappeared on the other side of the barrier. He is too fast. We need to find a way to trap him, the captains voiced with looks of frustration. No, we need to destroy the barrier. That's the only reason he is out here, to deter us, Captain Vilax yelled. It seemed like the western part of the barricade got a little breathing space after Gustav appeared on the other end. The other end had been raining attacks on the barricade when Gustav was busy dealing with the other side. With his sudden rampage, he had truly taken a huge load off the barricade. However, Gustav was still one person going against 3,000 participants. He couldn't deal with every single one of them at the same time. About 8 minutes had passed since he started his rampage, and he had successfully put many of them out of commission, but it still wasn't enough, especially since he avoided the much stronger opponents to deal with weaker ones first. "It's Captain Crimson." One of them yelled the moment Gustav appeared on the other side. Gustav had become a wild force to reckon with since this challenge began, and the participants understood what his appearance meant. Whoosh, Gustav's figure blurred, and he reappeared before an Oxlokik who had the hole in his chest gleaming with a dangerous scarlet light. Gustav grabbed the Oxlokik before he could react and lifted him slightly before turning him around. Through him, a powerful scarlet beam shot out from the Oxlokik chest, blasting multiple participants away upon collision. Kyra, Arf! Screams rang out as some participants lost their limbs from this attack, but Gustav wasn't done. He proceeded to charge at the hundreds of participants up ahead, turning the Oxlokik in his grasp to a weapon. Bang, 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 bang. "I think you should take a look at Snovel." Kmi swung the entire Oxlokik's body like it weighed nothing, slamming him into tens of participants in less than a second. Attacks approached him from behind, which he managed to evade. Gustav leapt into the air. Once more, as his skin turned dark, his face transformed, taking the form of a dark bunny with massive horns and purplish, terrifying glowing eyes. "Kyr!" Gustav opened his mouth, and sonic waves shot out of them, decimating this part of the battlefield. Many participants closed their ears in pain while bleeding profusely from different orifices of their bodies. The sonic scream didn't just affect them physically. To them, it felt like their internal organs were turning to mush. What the hell? Just how many supernatural abilities does he possess? He's a monster. The participants that were still active stared at Gustav's figure above in disbelief. Gustav just kept using abilities upon abilities. It almost felt like their numbers were useless against him. It had been 10 minutes since he came out here, and in that short time frame, he had taken out around 2,000 participants single-handedly. This wasn't to say he hadn't taken any damage, but Gustav was moving so fast and precise that it made it difficult for anyone to successfully land a hit on him. Even the fastest species had been unsuccessful because it seemed like Gustav was able to predict their movements. They were very fast, but they couldn't fly, so catching up to Gustav was impossible for them. Fwye, Gustav descended with speed while conjuring an atomic blade. Before the participants could recover completely from the sonic waves, the atomic blade swept across the air. Two of the Rusians instantly got their legs lopped off. Loud and painful shrieks reverberated across the place as these two fell face flat, unable to run. At this moment, 3 of the Rusians arrived on the left and right sides of Gustav, stabbing their arm forward like blades. Gustav raised his left arm and wrapped it around the arm of the one on the left before swinging him to collide with the one on the right. However, the one behind managed to get Gustav. Pucci Gustav had moved slightly to the side to avoid getting his internal organs penetrated, but the arm cleanly stabbed through his left back area. It shoved through his left chest area, close to his shoulder. The Rusians were still the fastest species in the universe after all. It was a wonder that Gustav had managed to evade their attacks for this long. The impact sent Gustav catapulting forward, and other participants took advantage of this opportunity to rain down attacks on him. A bolt slammed into him from up ahead, sending him hurling backwards. Once more, fly. Tens of participants crowded his figure, jumping to him and hounding Gustav with barrages of attacks. In just a few moments, he had been covered completely by hundreds of participants. Things would be easier if you just used Yarki. The The system voiced two major disadvantages. Everyone would know that I am a cosmic superior being, and it would also affect those within the barricade. Gustav responded while his entire figure was covered in total darkness. You still care about everyone knowing? The system inquired. Maybe I do. Also, I haven't used everything, Gustav said internally as his eyes emitted a silvery glow. Silver scales began to appear all across his body as horns grew out of his forehead. His body turned even more muscular than before as he reached a height of 10 feet despite the pressure of the hundreds of participants weighing on his figure. The participants could feel a tingling sense of danger at this moment, almost like something was building up. Boom! A powerful surge of energy suddenly spread across the entire battlefield, sending every participant within a 10-mile radius flying. Ultimate combination has been activated. Gustav's figure ascended into the air with a participant in his grasp. He proceeded to throw the helpless participant downwards after ascending to a height of 5,000 feet. Bang! Gustav dove forward to deal with the rest of the participants around. Swaya boom! He suddenly paused as a loud explosion rocked the battlefield from far behind him. His perception swept across the place, and he instantly understood what was going on. They got in, he voiced with an alarmed tone before turning around and flying towards the west side of the barricade. At this moment, the screens above displayed that only 2 minutes were left before Red would successfully capture the medallion, but some of the participants from other colors had managed to break through the barricade. Swoosh! Gustav descended upon the west side of the barricade to spot a massive hole where the Iro silk was supposed to be. Bang! 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 A battle had already ensued within the barricade. He immediately spotted a figure up hundreds of feet up ahead in green vest who was inches away from making contact with a piece of the medallion. You're tuning into the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.